All right, hello everybody, and welcome to episode one of the Catholic Hangout. This is going to be more of a laid-back type of forum or show compared to Logos Triumphant. Logos Triumphant, we usually try to stick to one topic and then do call-ins or whatever. This is going to be open to anybody to come in and ask questions and have an open discussion about whatever you want. So if you want to come in and talk about whatever you want, it's t.me/spexochat. We made it public, so anybody can come in. Obviously, we have my boy, the robot Catholic himself, Pine Sap. What's up, buddy? Oh, I think we gotta.
Happy.
You're back home and you're happy. Yeah, I had to unmute the thing again. So I tried to make this frame for the Catholic Hangout, and it is just not. It's not working out at all. I definitely need a professional frame maker for the stream. But I mean, it looks all right. But you can still see like the bottom of my. I wonder if I can make this full screen or something. But you can still see like the bottom bar of it. All right, whatever. I guess it works for now. We got America Plus in here. What's up, America Plus?
Yo, how's it going, folks? Yo, real quick, I just want to say, within the next 48 hours, be sure you check out Crosstalk's news channel. We are currently in DC, and we filmed a video so great, we're going to play it for 48 hours straight. So, within the next 48 hours, be sure to go to Crosstalk News, because we did something pretty epic in DC.
All right, dope. Yeah, I heard you guys ran into Bernie Sanders and stuff and had some good content. All right, so people are not liking this this frame. It looks like so. I'm just gonna take off this frame until we get a more professional one. I guess. Hold on. Let me take this off. Hold up.
The people have spoken.
Yeah, the people definitely. Hold up. All right, so PineSap, real quick before we get into open discussion, I wanted to talk about the debate that you had with Peter Diamond of Vatican Catholic, who I won't lie, like even though he's a sedevacantist and I don't agree with his position on that stuff, he did honestly help me decide on becoming Catholic because his videos on why orthodoxy is false and talking about the Council of Florence and things of that nature really propelled me to accept the Catholic faith. But obviously he's a sedevacantist, so really any of his content that takes place after like 1965 or Vatican II is just horrendous and horrible. But you did a debate yesterday. If you guys haven't seen that debate, I uploaded it on my channel. I recommend you watch it on my channel instead of Vatican Catholic because they are sedevacantist heretics. And you guys had a debate over whether or not, over basically invincible ignorance on whether or not there is a possibility of salvation outside of the Catholic Church. And so I kind of want to do like a little debrief of that debate. My opinion is that you objectively won because you stuck to the magisterium, and even though you were working within his framework of sticking to pre-Vatican II sources, because he's a sedevacantist, so he doesn't really accept anything magisterial after Vatican II, even sticking to pre-Vatican II sources, you still, I think, held your own, and you honestly objectively won. But even if you agree with Peter's position, which if you do, you're in error, basically, because the magisterium teaches PineSap's position, basically. But even if you believe in Peter's position, you cannot deny that PineSap clearly held his own and defended his position extremely well. And the fact that Peter has been doing apologetics for 15 or plus years or something along those lines, and PineSap has been a Catholic for just a year, maybe a little over a year. The fact that Peter didn't BTFO PineSap is extremely embarrassing and shows how special and gifted PineSap is and how smart he is. So you did an excellent job. You are a fantastic debater. It's an honor to be able to call you my friend, and I'm so glad that I found you. And also, he just basically relied on falling back on insults, technicalities, and obfuscating your points and strawmanning you, where he was trying to like fall back on like what certain saints said instead of what the magisterium says, where you basically just stuck to the magisterium, which is what the authoritative teaching of the Catholic Church is. And I think that overall you definitely came out stronger. How do you feel that the debate went?
Yeah, so, overall, I would say, by the way, man, what you just said meant the world to me. You have no idea. But, yeah, overall with the debate, look, there were things I could have improved. I think I could have, really delved in the documents a little deeper. There was kind of some prep work I could have done. The main issue was that he started to accuse me in our emails of, dodging out of the debate. And I'm like, dude, I'm not dodging. I'm literally a college student who doesn't know his schedule till when he gets it, right? So it's like, if you're texting me, or not texting, you're emailing me the night of being like, hey, want to debate? And it's like, I have a 10-page paper due tomorrow. I don't have time to debate. You know what I mean? So like he started to accuse me of that, and I didn't want to give him any rope by which to hang me by saying, oh, look how scared Pine Sap is to debate and stuff like that, guys. Really shows you what the Vatican II church is up to. So I just said, you know what, screw it. Well, okay, we'll debate yesterday and stuff like that. And I mean, I literally pulled up like maybe 5 websites that kind of had the materials that I needed and stuff like that. And all I did was just stick to the magisterium. And I kept, I kept going back to that. I kept sticking with that because, as Jared taught me, they love to get off on saying, oh, well, this saint said this and that saint said that. Well, the saints are awesome. The saints are fantastic. But the saints are not infallible. The church's magisterium is, right? So there is the possibility that a saint could be incorrect or not paint a full picture as to a certain situation. That doesn't mean they're awful. That doesn't mean they're wrong necessarily. It just means they're not the magisterium, right? And so, I stuck to, again, the magisterium, and Peter had to keep going to technicalities. I brought up Suprema Hac Sancta, and he was like, well, that was a private letter, and they're heretic modernists and stuff like that. I'm like, let me see. Cardinal Ottaviani, the head of the Holy Office, who literally was known for being a theological master, or 2 guys in trailer park who privately interpret encyclicals. Yeah, who sticks out more in that? I don't know. It's a tough one. Likewise, what is completely, and I'm just going to be blunt, what's retarded about their argument is that document came out in 1949. If it was heretical, Pope Pius XII, who they claim is the last pope, had 9 years before he died to issue a correction, to rescind it, to say, no, this is not accurate, and actually invincible ignorance is heretical or whatever, but none of that ever happened, right? So they have to go to these examples of, well, it was private, and yeah, also the Holy Office taught geocentrism once or whatever. So, and also, he mentioned this completely inane argument about the Summa Theologica being taught in all seminaries or universities by Pius X as like something put out by the Holy Office, and saying, and Pius X denied the Immaculate Conception. Well, again, that's apples to oranges, my friend. The Summa Theologica overall is completely orthodox. One little point that's off does not mean that he would be propagating heresy. If what you say is true, and Pius XII approved a document directly teaching invincible ignorance, he's a heretic. So is Pius XI now the last pope? And you'll see this with Sede Vacantis online. Like, there's Sede Vacantis that think that Benedict XV was an anti-pope, and that St. Pius X was the last true pope. I mean, it's an inconsistent position. It's like watered down from here. And, I could have done better, I think, on enunciating like Mystici Corpus and stuff like that. Still don't think I was wrong at all on that, because Suprema Hex Sancta literally I keep saying Sancta, excuse me, it's Sacra. That was another mistake. I sometimes would misquote the names of certain encyclicals. But that document makes an explicit reference to Mystici Corpus, right? And he's like, well, no, like, if you go back to the Latin, and he does the same thing that someone like Ubi Petrus does with like pro-papal statements. It's like, well, he's not saying what he's actually saying, and, trying to workshop it. And their system is flimsy. It's not nuanced. It's just bad. It doesn't work, right? And they have to get off on all these technicalities. And he even conceded that in Quanto Conficiamur, Pope Pius IX was, quote-unquote, being ambiguous. Yeah, I'm sure he was being ambiguous when several other theological writers wrote about invincible ignorance prior to Vatican II. Yeah, really being ambiguous there, big guy. So basically, it's not even about me. It's just the fact that when you look at their position, I would give CMRI or SSPV or like Sede guys like that more credence for just being a little bit more consistent. But they're not even consistent in their own system. You know what I mean?
And he was just so insulting and pompous. Like, I've watched a
He
lot of
was.
Vatican Catholic content, and like I said, I really enjoy some of their more past content involving like their arguments against orthodoxy and Protestantism. And I'm not gonna lie, it literally helped me become Catholic, right? But obviously, like people that aren't fully orthodox and or fully good, I guess that you could say, can still lead you to the right path, right? Like you got to take the good with the bad or whatever, or take what you need, leave the rest. Like certain Protestants help lead me to the faith. That doesn't mean that they're completely orthodox or completely good or whatever. But I never really watched him debate anybody, and like listening fully to the debate that he had with you, he was so insulting and condescending that it was just really a turnoff. Like, he was not acting in good faith at all. He kept calling you a heretic. He kept saying like, "Oh well, you're not Catholic. That's not a Catholic position." Blah blah blah. All this stuff, and it's like, bro, you're sede vacantist. Your position is completely untenable. Like and like you're being cordial enough to act in charity, and you're agreeing to work within his silly, ridiculous confines of only using pre-Vatican II sources, and probably even before that. I don't even know. And he's just being completely just a douchebag, honestly. Like, that's not even me being slanderous. He literally came off objectively as a douchebag, because I was listening, and like at first I was like, okay, you guys are both making valid points, you guys are both defending your position relatively well. But then when he kept like just going, like being just an insulting douche, he reminded me of Jay Dyer. And then I was talking to you privately, and you said something that really struck a chord with me, that schism and heresy basically corrupts your soul and leads you to be just a mean-hearted, spirited person. And don't get me wrong, I know people that know Jay Dyer, and they say that he's a very kind person in real life, that they met him and that he was very nice to them. And I don't deny that. I like a lot of what Jay Dyer does, but in debates you could see that he completely lacks charity, and that and regardless of, even if he makes valid points, that is a turnoff to people, you know. So I think overall you came off extremely well. And just once again, the fact that you are so new to this, and that you are just like I said, I'm the usher to your Justin Bieber. I am exposing you to the world. I have brought you to the world. I discovered you. I'm your producer. I'm going to mooch off of your success when you get to Catholic Answers and stuff like that. But just like it's insane that he couldn't formulate a better opinion or better arguments, considering the fact that you are so new to this and he has been doing this for years, and you just really defended your position extremely well. And I think it was great exposure for you, and I'm really proud of you and happy that how well you did.
Spexter, that means the world to me, big guy. And you know, honestly, like I don't want to act like some like cherubim or saint or something, but the real reason I did it is because like I never want any, like, the thought of any soul being dragged off to hell by those two ragamuffins is atrocious to me. And like if I did that video and it maybe helped one person, and nothing good that I did came from me, it all comes from God, but like if that can help one person escape the Diamondite cult and become Catholic and truly love our Lord Jesus Christ, my life, if I died tomorrow or I died the day after that, my life would be complete. Because it's like it all comes down to, I never want a single soul to go to hell. I never want a single soul to be in schism. I never want a single soul to be misled and astray. And that's why I go so hard on these people, and why I don't really anymore, especially since starting this with you, big guy, like I don't pull any punches with the ortho bros anymore. I don't pull any punches with the Sedes. You know, I'm a little off with the whole like false charity thing, because it's like they're literally like killing people's souls forever. Like there's no charity in that. And it doesn't mean that we shouldn't treat them with charitable conduct. We should, because we hope that they would become Catholic too, right? Like the prodigal son, we want to welcome them back into our home at any time. Like if Peter Diamond tomorrow was like, you know, not to me, he doesn't need to answer to me, he needs to answer to Rome. But he was like, dude, like I was really thinking about like our debate or this other debate that I had with this other person, and like I realize how wrong I am and stuff like that, and I just want to come back home, I'd give the guy a big hug. Like I don't hate anybody. I don't want anyone to go to hell or die in a state of separation from the church. And I want that love to drive my entire life, because it's the only thing that matters to me is seeing one more person enter through those gates and embrace our Lord for eternity. That's the only thing that matters to me.
So true. Yeah, Peter Diamond, like obviously he knows his stuff, right? He is very knowledgeable and he's very intelligent and stuff, but unfortunately he is a heretic, right? And like people were saying like, oh, I'm bashing him for calling him a douchebag. Like I'm just using that synonymously with him being uncharitable. That's objectively he was being uncharitable and he was being very pompous and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that I hate him or wish him ill will. I would love for Peter Diamond to come back to the true faith and be reunited with Rome, just like I would anybody. You know, but unfortunately, he is leading people into error despite his knowledge. And I think that if he came back to the true faith, that he would play a big part in spreading the gospel in a true and faithful manner. And I pray that he does do that. You know, I don't wish harm or ill will on anybody. You know, Peter Diamond has a lot of great qualities, but unfortunately, his negative qualities are currently outweighing his positive qualities by leading people into damnation. That's just the truth of the matter. You know, I would.
And he needs to be called a Gentile and a tax collector for that, frankly, as our Lord said too.
Would you say he needs to be called a Gentile and a tax collector?
Yeah, like our Lord in Matthew 18:17 says, you know, when someone's rebuked by the church, you know, may they be a Gentile and a tax collector to you.
Based. And Gentile just means like heathen, right? That means like somebody that's outside.
Yeah, I mean non-Catholic.
Okay, based. Yeah.
Or like person who's against the church, not necessarily non-Catholic, but like someone who's like explicitly against the church.
Yeah, because a lot of people think that Gentile is just something that like Jews call like non-Jews or whatever, but that's something that actually Catholics use too, right? To describe people that are outside the faith.
Yes, because in the and the confusion is completely understandable, because in the time where our faith was called, you know, Judaism, or identified as Judaism, right? In the Old Testament, the term Gentile did mean non-Jew, because it just meant someone who was not a part of a part of the covenant, right? But even in the Old Testament, what's actually profoundly beautiful is by someone being foreign, it didn't automatically make them opposed to God. Like people could still even convert in the Old Testament. It wasn't like a blood thing where it was like if you weren't literally a part of the tribe, you were like damned for eternity. It's just that the Jews at the time were the only people who were faithful to God, because everyone else fell into idolatry, right?
Awesome. All right. I mean, I think, is there anything else you want to say about the debate or Peter Diamond in general, or you want to move on to other stuff?
You know, something that really stuck out, and I wanted to share this reflection with you and get your thoughts on it. Whenever I see a heretic or an apostate or a schismatic, it reminds me of when our Lord in the Gospels would say something, and he would speak very clearly, and he would say, I'm the way, I'm the life, I'm the truth, right? And the Pharisees would just like gnash their teeth. You know, you remember reading that in the Gospels, where like anytime our Lord would say something, speak very clearly, it was said that the Pharisees didn't make an argument back. They just gnashed their teeth. And I think that was kind of what started to happen with Peter a little bit, is like when we passed the threshold of kind of decency, and it was like he was starting to get kind of outed for what he was, I think he just resorted to, again, gnashing his teeth, right? And I'm not saying that like I'm Jesus or something like that. I don't want to give that impression. I just mean like Christ's word being spoken by through whoever I think confronted him, right? And you see this with like William Albrecht too, when like William was like debating him when he came on to Reason Theology, and William was very, you know, the Lord was really speaking through William and using William to speak his truth, and Peter just gnashes his teeth. He just gets angry, and he just starts calling him a heretic and this and that and this other thing. And it's like, I think that is the epitome of what it looks like when you reject our Lord and his church, you know?
Based. Yep. So true. Yeah, I think that I think you definitely, I mean, anybody objectively coming in from an outsider's perspective, I think would see that you were way more charitable and cordial, and held your own and defended your position in a correct manner. Obviously his fans, he's like the Sede Vacantis, right? He's like the guy who has spread like Sede Vacantism across like the online ecath sphere, right?
Yeah, because Bishop Donald, father Anthony Cicada, passed away a couple years ago, and some people kind of refer to his writings and videos, but they're really like kind of obscure. Donald Sanborn is another guy that kind of spread some stuff, but even he, it dissipated. But it's like the Diamonds were notorious for like going across the internet sphere, even early in like YouTube's days. I'm pretty sure I've heard, and just like promoting these erroneous ideas.
And what is the deal with them, like him calling himself a brother or something? Like, what is that's not even like, is that a real title? Like, what is that? Brother Peter Diamond.
A brother,
it's like a
would
monk,
be
right?
like a lay. Yeah, it would be like a lay brother of a monastic order, right?
Okay.
So it would be someone who's not ordained by any means, but they're just like, they're a part of the order. So they would not offer mass or anything like that, but they would like live with the monastic order and like, celebrate the divine mysteries with them and what have you. But they, by their own authority, have called themselves brothers, right?
That's ridiculous.
And deemed themselves brothers.
So they have no authority figure has called them brother or anything like that. They just decided like, oh, we're gonna call ourselves brothers.
Basically, yeah. It's like a Hulk Hogan, like, listen here, brother. Like, that's the extent of their authority, right? They call themselves brother.
Yeah. Not to downplay their knowledge, because I'm not going to downplay their knowledge. They're clearly way more knowledgeable than somebody like me is, right? Like they know their stuff theologically and their encyclicals and their history and all that stuff. But come on, they live in a freaking trailer park. Like they're like hermits who live in a trailer park.
I think with his knowledge, like what I wanted to say is like, being intelligent doesn't automatically translate into being right.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Because you have guys like, for instance, like a Protestant theologian like Philip Schaff, right? And Schaff is a very intelligent guy. That's objectively true. But he lacks like truth to what he's saying. Like he, in a lot of his writings, tries to like downplay the papacy and act like it, wasn't what it really was and that sort of thing. And this is a very common thing where, you have guys who are maybe very well read and what have you, but it doesn't mean that they're on the side of right. It just makes them more crafty almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that. I think Peter Diamond was owned. I would love to see you do a debate against either Peter Diamond, but I don't think he'll be willing to do it, or somebody of prominent status within the Sede Vacantis movement, just on the idea of Sede Vacantism in general and why it's untenable. And I think you would do really well in that debate. And I think that a lot of people will benefit from that kind of debate. And also, PineSap and I are planning on doing a series completely covering Vatican II and the correct opinion that you should have on it. It's probably going to be a multi-part series within Logos Triumphant, and I think that it'll be really beneficial to a lot of people who are just completely, under a false impression on Vatican II and what it has caused, basically. I'm really excited for that series. But I guess we'll move on before we start going to like open discussion and stuff like that. We're getting a decent amount of people into this chat, so hopefully they want to contribute. But I want to talk real quick about incorruptible bodies, because that's like something of the sainthood that like really like was surprising to me, that there's certain saints that their bodies are on like full display in the Vatican and stuff, and their bodies have been incorruptible, meaning that years after they died, their body has not had any sign of like decay or something like that. And like, is there any real explanation for that, like secularly, or is this like something supernatural? Like, what's the deal with that?
I honestly think it's always supernatural. Because even with like mummification, like it's very hard to like make someone like be completely incorruptible even with that, right? where like maybe their skin, with mummification, it's like maybe their skin doesn't like, kind of decay as fast or what have you, but it really, really, really still looks like old and like ratty and stuff like that. But being incorruptible is like miraculous, and generally the supernatural quality, it seems like, for a lot of incorruptible saints is how pure they were or how close they were to Christ, being sort of an element of their incorruptibility. Maybe there was a certain pure thing about their body. Like there's been saints that like everything else about them has decayed except their heart. Or there was another saint that I can't remember what his name was, but he, like every part of his body was corrupted except his tongue, right? Because he was such a great orator. So, really with incorruptibility, it's generally a saint that was very like pure or had like a pure element about them that led to that part of their body not being corrupted whatsoever.
What was that guy? Oh, here he is. Carlo Acutis. You know about him?
Oh, blessed Carlo Acutis. Yeah, he's one of the most recent, like, kind of like beatified people.
He's like a millennial saint. Is he a saint or is he? What is he?
Well, he's a blessed, so he's not a full saint yet, but he's already, like, if you're a servant of God, you're already on your way to being canonized at that point, and you can ask for a servant of God's intercession.
And apparently he's one of the people that has an incorruptible body. His body is on display, and it seems like it hasn't decayed or anything like that. And is it like, not? I'm just playing devil's advocate. I'm not denying any church teaching or anything like that. But is there like evidence that it's not like it's been the body has been preserved somehow? It's literally like they just had this body and it just is not decaying, or like what's the deal with that?
Nothing that I have seen. It seems very similar to like something like Eucharistic miracles, where it's just this like profound like profundity of like, this is just happening all of a sudden. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm sure that there's some secular person who's tried to like dissect it or something like that, but I don't know how tenable that really is. You know what I mean?
I think with Saint Charbel, there was like a formal inquiry into what happened, and like secular scientists did investigations on it, and they found out it was true. So
that's crazy. Yeah, there's like a lot of, I feel like, Eucharistic miracles and other stuff like that is just like secular people cannot have any evidence for it. Like even the Shroud of Turin, like they can't figure out how the energy would create the image that it created on the shroud in that time that it was created, like, and it's just like it's miraculous, and I think that just further proves evidence for our faith. But Carlos Acutis, I know there's some debate about him. Why?
I didn't mean to.
What? Okay.
Sorry,
what was
But Carlo Acutis wasn't actually incorrupt. They just had a representation of his body, and some of it was inside the tomb, and then people thought it was incorrupt because it looked like a body, but it wasn't actually him.
So what was it?
Gotcha.
It was just like I don't know.
Like a wax mask? Maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, probably something like that. That's okay, though. There's plenty of examples of incorrupt saints.
Wow, this dude was born less than 2 years before me, and he was only 15 when he died. He was an English-born Italian Catholic youth and amateur computer programmer who is best known for documenting Eucharistic miracles around the world and cataloging them into a website which he created before his death from leukemia. He was noted for his cheerfulness, computer skills, and deep devotion to the Eucharist, which becomes a core theme of his life. He was beatified on October 10th, 2020. So what's the difference between beatification and like sainthood?
So when someone's like fully beatified, it means that they're like fully made a saint. But like during the process of beatification, there's like miracles that are assigned to someone and they move up the roster to eventually sainthood. So there's servant of God, which means they're worthy of veneration. Venerable, meaning they've probably had like some miracle tied to them. Blessed is like, I think there's like at least 2 miracles tied to someone when they're blessed. I can't remember the exact process, but it's something like that. And then sainthood is like, oh yeah, for sure, this person's like a saint and we canonize them.
Okay. So is he going to be? Do you think he's going to become a saint or what?
Oh, I think so, definitely. And I mean, even if he never did, it's like it doesn't really matter because if you're already like on that scale, you're like already there, basically.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Fulton
Like,
Sheen's a blessed, right?
yeah. No, he's venerable. He's not a
Yeah,
blessed
he's
yet.
So does that mean that he's in heaven?
Yes. I believe it does mean that he's in heaven.
All right. So all right. Let's try to explain it. So there's venerable, blessed, and then saint.
Servant of God, venerable, blessed, saint.
All right. So are they all like thought to be in heaven, or what is like?
Yes.
Like let's explain like the differences. So what's servant of God?
So servant of God means they're like worthy of veneration.
Okay.
So that's like Dorothy Day, Cardinal Mary Duval, who I have a personal devotion to. People who are deemed to be worthy of veneration. Venerable means like they've kind of been checked out a little bit more, maybe had a miracle associated with them or something, and they've moved up that process. Blessed is like, okay, for sure they've got like some miracles to them and stuff like that. And then sainthood is like, there's no doubt that this person is, fully a saint or what have you, so we make them fully a saint.
Okay.
But if someone's already a servant of God, you can already ask for their intercession and stuff like that. And I think really at that point, we can readily assume that they are in heaven.
So what is Mussolini?
Mussolini is not on that chart yet, but maybe one day.
But Padre Pio and
Probably.
that mystic lady, what was her name? Ezra?
Yes. However, again, that's private
Revelation or whatever.
Private revelation.
Uh-huh.
And so that's said to be, you can believe that this happened, but it's not like you don't have to assent with it with faith. Like someone could say, I don't think that that's true or whatever, and they would still be in good standing with the church. I think it's true.
All right. By the way,
I
people,
actually believe most private revelations from saints, to be completely honest.
well, there is this private revelation from The Exorcist that is pretty popular. I've seen it on Reddit and Catholic Twitter, where they were talking about how the devil loves when people receive communion on the hand, and like that empowers him or something like that, which kind of seems contradictory because if the church is allowing communion on the hand, then what they're allowing the empowerment of the devil, that kind of seems a little weird. So I mean, I don't know if I would take all private revelation as like, not infallible, but like as like, oh, we have to believe all of this stuff.
Oh yeah.
I'm certain there's a way you can interpret it where it's like, even though the church historically has allowed for this thing, maybe the modern application of this practice has led to a decrease in faith in the real presence of the Eucharist. So maybe the devil loves that element, but there's nothing intrinsically wrong. I don't know what a good example would be. Like, there's things you can do that lead to sin but aren't intrinsically wrong,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously the receiving the Eucharist on the hand is probably imprudent, but it's all really dependent on whether or not you believe fully that the Eucharist is the full presence of Christ and you are receiving it as reverently as possible, right? So, I mean, I think that would play a major factor into the case of whether or not the devil enjoys how you receive it.
From a certain point of view, you could say the devil likes it when some Protestant pastors read the Bible because they're reading it incorrectly. But there's nothing intrinsically wrong with reading Scripture, right? But when you're reading Scripture from a certain point of view where you're discounting the truth and you're putting your own interpretation there over and above the interpretation of the church, the devil likes that. So,
Based. So
especially
true.
when Protestants want to bash on the Blessed Virgin. Like, whenever people like try and go on about that, it takes all of my self control not to like blow up on them. I'm just like, please shut your mouth, So
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure these rad Protestants that say very unkind things about our Holy Mother, I'm pretty sure the devil likes that. But when it comes to like,
don't worry, when we take power, those people will be instantly arrested upon committing acts of blasphemy. So not to worry, it's all good.
Those people aren't even in keeping with their own tradition.
Thanks,
If you go
sorry guys.
If you go back to some of the things Luther said about the Blessed Virgin Mary, I mean, Luther was gay and cringe. We can all agree on that. But Martin Luther wasn't even as radical as modern low church Protestants were.
Oh yeah,
this really doesn't emerge until like the 1600s with people like John Smith. It's ridiculous.
Well,
I
even
just
like
wanna
I, I,
tap
I
in
mean,
here.
all schism and heresy like just devolves into like extremism. I mean, for instance, there's like an ortho saint that like says something along the lines of like when the Latins say that like Rome has primacy or the Pope has primacy, do not contradict them. And and then he goes on to say, but you know, whether that Pope holds the real faith or not isn't true. And then like in the 21st century, you'll have like orthos literally saying like, no, James led the council at Jerusalem, and you know, all these like almost like Protestant lies. Like the Orthodox Study Bible literally has like Protestant like footnotes basically. So, you know, that's just one example of many. Not to mention like the low church Protestants that hang like gay pride flags and stuff like that. But needless to say, it's just like this kind of extremism just like keeps going and going and going and going until there's nothing left.
Yeah, and
Well,
what?
Sedevacantism is a brilliant example of that because you have this. I hate to say it because I don't like to exclude SSPX people, but you have the sin of Lefebvre, you know, schism, and then a lot of groups like the SSPV kind of barreled off of that, and they're just a logical continuation of what Lefebvre did. Because
They
you have a small act of sin, and that just rolls into more and more because nothing remains small forever.
And what's funny is they become more consistent than the person who starts it too. Like, you know, Lefebvre started his break off and used these like awful arguments for trying to like resist the Pope. And I've like read many of their.
Yo, come on, who is this now, bro?
Oh my
This
gosh,
is
is this the New York supremacist over
is this
here?
the fucking
Oh,
Bro,
golf
it's
guy?
not time
the
for
simp.
car
It's the
shows.
Who
simp.
is this dude?
Guy that makes New York his whole identity.
off
Yo,
axis,
mods,
bro.
mods that are in the live chat, bro,
Yo, straight up New
stay on your
York.
game, and just anybody who does this shit, just excuse my language, but just block them,
No, it's
mute
okay,
them.
man.
Holy
Yo, was
crap!
I
that
just want to
the
push back a
fucking
little
drinking
bit.
league,
As I
bro?
was saying before, I hate to say it was rudely interrupted because that was very rude. Yeah, it just makes logical sense because like these SSPX books that like they were writing would give these like awful examples of again recognize and resist where they're like, you know, John of St. Thomas at the Council of Trent has this quote that like Peter doesn't need our flattery and we can resist him. But then it's like you read that like source quote and then like the next sentence over he's like, no, but we should completely obey the Pope in all things. And I'm like, this is just bad and shoddy scholarship. And I think a lot of the like Sedes contests sort of realize that. And so they fit their sort of like logical conclusion of the Lefebvrite schism, which is, oh yeah, we can't recognize and resist. So the only logical conclusion is the Pope's a heretic and we haven't had a Pope since Pius XII. You know what I mean?
And what is the deal like with Protestants being so disrespectful of our Holy Mother? Because even if they don't accept some of the dogmas like the Assumption or perpetual virginity or things of that nature, like it is clear just within Scripture that she held a very special role as Mother of God, as it says in Luke, and how highly Christ thought of her. So when I see these Protestants like blatantly blaspheming the Holy Mother, it just doesn't even reconcile even within the framework of their worldview. Like, why are they so anti-Mary? It's crazy.
It's part of this whole trend where Protestants like to de-emphasize the carnality of the faith. Like a lot of Protestants don't like to have crucifixes; they like to have crosses without Jesus. A lot of Protestants, well, they don't believe in the real presence, and most especially, they don't revere the Blessed Virgin Mary because it emphasizes the humanity of Christ. You know, I mean, the Blessed Virgin Mary is the vessel through whom Christ becomes man. And I guess they just don't like to dwell on the fact that there's an element of the faith that's connected to the world still. You know, it's not just like spiritual Eastern philosophy thing where it's like, oh, we're just a bunch of ghosts and bodies and stuff. No, like you are on the earth, and that's relevant to the faith.
Yep, facts. There was a great thread that I posted before. Oh, here it is. Where they were talking about like scriptural evidence for the Virgin Mary, and like when she says like that when Gabriel appears to Mary and he says that you will have a child or whatever, and she says, I know not man. The Greek or whatever language it was, I'm trying to find it. So first Mary's question to the angel Gabriel in Luke 134, after he tells her she is to conceive the Savior, how shall this be, since I know not man? If she simply meant to say that she was a virgin, she could have simply said, I am a virgin, but she opted instead for this curious phase. The two key words here are shall and know, which more closely means will be, indicates that Mary understands the angel will be talking about a future conception, not an immediate one, as some Protestants like James White argue. Jin soko, the verb for to know, is importantly rendered in the form of the continuous present, not the past tense or present. This indicates that she is not talking about a past state of having not known man, meaning that like she's not saying like I've never known a man, or saying that or simple present state of not knowing, like I'm not currently knowing a man, I'm not currently having sex or whatever, but a perpetual state, in the same way that one says I don't drink or I attend church, meaning that like she's not saying like, oh, I've never known a man, or that I'm currently not knowing a man. She's saying that like it's kind of implying that I've intended to stay a virgin, right? So it says the Annunciation was initially likely as confusing to Mary as one saying you're going to die of alcoholism to one who had sworn off alcohol. The form of the Greek verb signifies an ongoing reality. She was not only a virgin at the time, but to remain one in perpetuity. The corresponding Aramaic word she most likely actually said was yodat, the active participle of yada, which would also indicate a permanent condition. Taken together, Mary is basically asking, how will I conceive when I do not have relations with men? So, I mean, that's just like, just going within scripture and going from the source material of the original language shows that the Virgin Mary not only was currently a virgin and staying a virgin even within her marriage, that she was planning to remain a virgin like indefinitely. Right. So I think that that's just one thing that signifies or validates the idea of perpetual virginity.
But Spexo, Jesus had brothers, dude.
Oh no! Sorry, Spencer, you couldn't get into that one.
I hate that argument so much. It's like the stupidest argument in the world. I'm sorry.
Jesus
It's
was
over,
also
bro.
queer.
It's over, bro.
Jesus was also
Dude, it's
queer.
over.
Over.
Yeah, so
Based on the
for
Old
people
Testament.
for people that don't know, let's just try to explain it in like layman's terms. From the Greek terminology that they used, indicating for brothers and things of that nature, could also mean cousins or
Right.
whatever the case is. Like it doesn't necessarily, the way that it was used is not necessarily indicative. What is the word I'm looking? Indicative of the word of the word for biological sibling, right? So.
You look at the Old Testament, and they use the exact same word in the Greek Septuagint, adelphoi, for what is it, like Lot or someone, and they're describing what's not a filial relationship. They're describing like a cousin. I think it's describing the relationship between Lot and Abraham, and it uses the word adelphoi, and they're not brothers. And so you have this precedent set in the Koine Greek language, especially in Scripture, that adelphoi doesn't always mean brother. But Protestants just can't understand this. They just go, well, also, by the way, there's a very ancient understanding of the text where they're Joseph's children, you know, like from a previous marriage. And I personally don't subscribe to that.
Yeah, we actually got into a debate with that in my chat today because of the Consecration of Joseph, which is actually a book that was given to me as a gift by my priest, which kind of indicates that, I mean, it kind of goes with the idea that, you know, Saint Joseph was a perpetual virgin as well, which it's not a dogma. So like either opinion is valid, I guess, that either he had children prior to marrying Mary or he just remained a perpetual virgin in perpetuity, whatever the word is. So, I mean, that's not like a Catholic dogma, whether or not Saint Joseph either had kids prior to marrying Mary, or if he just remained a virgin, they were just talking about his cousin. So there is a possibility that Christ had like half brothers and sisters, right?
Yeah. That's the view. Joseph's perpetual virginity. That's the view I subscribe to. But I mean, there are arguments from the early church, like the Proto-Evangelium of James, which is written in like 120 A.D., describes Joseph's Jesus' half brothers, Joseph's children. So, like there's arguments that can be made either way. But all I'm saying is that there are a ton of ways that you can get around the use of the word brothers in the New Testament. But Protestants only use the English language for their theology because they're mostly American. So,
Because
you know,
listen, Jimmy Aiken appreciator, that KJV Bible came from Mount Sinai and it was written in English. You understand me, boy? Okay?
what
This
it's
Septuagint don't exist, all right?
we should
Listen
celebrate.
listen here, heretic. My pastor, Jim Bobby Boy from the Christ is Life Church, he also is the coach of the Jesus Hoops basketball team, told me, and according to the KJV Bible, all right, next to the Arby's in Allstate, in the parking lot at the Walmart, all right, listen here, look, listen, all right, Pastor Jim Bob, all right, my favorite pastor, told me that the Pope is actually, all right, according to a book, Ezekiel number 2, section 3. I'm reading the kids version. Okay, Pastor Jim. It has little pictures and everything. It's very cool. It has cartoon pictures. You got cartoon Jesus 2, cartoon Mary, but she's disgusting.
Cartoon
very
Jesus.
poor.
That's like that reminds me of Talladega Nights when they're praying and he's like, "Baby Jesus, all in your manger, cuddled up in your blankets," and then the wife is like,
He
"You know,
was a
Jesus
grown
became
man!
a man. He was a man."
It kind of reminds me of that.
He
I
had
think
a beard.
posted this. It was like Catholic like hymns and stuff, and then you just listen to like the Protestant hymns, and it's like some black lady like screaming.
Why can't I see who is
Post down
talking
in
right
front
now?
of
I need to raise your volume. Who is talking right now? What's your
Meatball
Meatball Groiper.
meatball group?
Oh, it's Meatball Groiper.
I got it.
My favorite little meatball.
Oh, Jeremiah's back in chat. Let's go. Okay.
You know,
What?
it's Pride Month, so we should celebrate the legacy of
It is
King
not
Philip
Pride
I.
Month. Pride Month does not exist. It is the month of the the Blessed Sacrament of Jesus Christ's Sacred Heart.
No, it's Pride Month. Jesus was queer.
I mean, not
Didn't you hear the
sacrament.
new
What am I
spec
saying?
stuff?
What am I saying?
Listen,
The sacrament.
listen.
Not the sacrament. Why do I keep saying sacrament? What is it?
No, just Sacred Heart.
Sacred
it's
Heart.
the Sacred Heart of Jesus.
Sacred Heart of
But
Jesus.
the only true
Pride
Bible was translated by a homosexual man, King James the
Yeah,
First.
the Freemasonic homosexual King James. That's the true word of
Bro,
God.
based-
In what was
he-
it like?
he didn't-
1612 or something.
He wrote that, bro. I'm telling you. He didn't translate, he wrote it, bro.
Oh, okay.
Now listen,
real quick
listen,
before.
Spaxo,
Yeah.
heretic. The real Bible was revealed to the people in
You-
1612.
Are anathema. You are I have no way to make you anathema, but you're anathema.
Yo,
Okay?
Papal,
Right,
Papal, what's his name? Where'd he go? He left? Oh no, there he is. Papal Groiper. Yo,
What? No.
his PFP from the thing that I made from that what is it, Dolly AI that creates images based on prompts, bro. That is such a sick image. I got to make that a cozy sticker. Pine Sap, try to remind me before we end the stream that I need to make that a cozy sticker. 100%. That is so sick. One thing before we open completely, because we're getting a little off track, before we open it completely to open discussion, I wanted to discuss this meme that has been going on from Reddit concerning a woman who was cheating on her husband and then confessed her adultery to her priest, and apparently the priest broke the seal of confession and told that to her husband, and that led to her divorce or whatever's going on. And now, this is a Reddit story, so we take it with a grain of salt. We don't know if this is actually true. We don't even know if this is really a Catholic priest, but people are going under the assumption that it's a Catholic priest. But just going under the assumption that it is true, I'm seeing a lot of people who are either self-proclaimed Catholics or even just ostensibly right-wing people that are saying, "Oh, this priest is so based. He roasted this roasty, blah blah blah, all this stuff." And it's like, this just shows that you're just not faithful, honestly, because he's not roasting a thought. He's not doing anything. He is excommunicated. He broke the seal of confession, which is to be not broken under any circumstances, even under threat of death, you are not to break the seal of confession as a priest. And people saying that this is based in epic are just basically endorsing the idea of breaking your holy orders instituted by God, basically, right? And it's just honestly disgusting. Like, yeah, we can joke around and say how base it is for girls who do stupid things to get roasted or whatever, but we're talking about holy orders, and we're talking about things that are instituted by God, and that what a priest's responsibility is in terms of somebody who is repenting for their sins and trying to get on the right path or whatever. Like, that is not cool. It is not okay to break the seal of confession. Like my priest, when we were talking about confession when I was in RCIA and stuff like that, he said that, like, no matter what you tell me, if somebody asks me what you said, I would never say that, even if they were like, okay, well, you're going to go to prison for the rest of your life, or whatever. He'd be like, okay, take me away, because I cannot break the seal of confession. That is like a holy thing that you cannot break. So what are your thoughts on this? I'm sure you agree with me that this is just disgusting that a priest would ever break the seal of confession.
It's abhorrent. And, I've kind of criticized before this whole idea of, because like the word based doesn't ultimately mean anything at the end of the day. And like sometimes people put what they deem based above like what is actually based, which is the truth of the faith. And this is not cool, guys. Like, this ain't cool. It kind of reminds me vaguely of like the video that someone was sharing the other day of Pastor Steven Anderson saying that like he wanted all homosexuals to just like put a bullet in their head and stuff like that. And I didn't like, I'm sure some people were like, that's awesome and that's cool. I don't think that's awesome or cool. I want those people to like live a new life in Christ and get rid of what they've been dealing with. Yeah, I don't want them to, be sodomites anymore, but I don't want them to die either. I want them to find new life in Jesus Christ and repent for their sins and be good Catholics, right? So, we need to stop with this whole like elevating our own private judgment above what the law of God is, right? And, saying that a priest breaking the seal of confession is based, brother, you don't know what you're talking about. That ain't cool. Especially when she was going there to repent and she was going there to amend her life, and he broke something that should be the safest place in the entire world, safer than Fort Knox.
And if I'm not wrong, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody is confessing of a sin, the priest cannot make the penance to be like, okay, well, you have to tell this person what you did, right? Like that, like that's not acceptable, right? That can't be a penance, right?
It can't be a penance. You can do penances where it's like, I maybe want you to go figure, like maybe read a book about maybe being like infidelitous or something, or like read this chapter of scripture that talks about what it's like when you do that or whatever. But you cannot by any means like say like, I want you to go and do this. You could give as a confessor counsel to do something that's not binding as a penance, like saying like, I think it would be best if you said X or Y. Mm-hmm. But you cannot by any means bind them to something that is like unfair.
Yeah, the story on Reddit, which once again we're just going under the assumption that this is true. It's a Reddit story, so it could be completely made up and nonsense or whatever. It's just a girl looking for attention, possibly. But just going under the assumption it's true because a lot of Catholics are taking it like it's true and acting like it's awesome or whatever. The story is basically that this girl was married, and her and her husband were like on the rocks or whatever, and one night she cheated on her husband, and then after that they kind of reconciled, her and her husband, and they were having a good marriage, and she went to her priest and confessed that she had cheated previously, and her priest told her that for her penance she needs to tell her husband that she cheated and tell him the truth, basically. And she couldn't do that currently, or she was waiting to do that for the right moment or whatever. And then the husband saw the priest, and the priest asked him like, oh, did your wife tell you, or what happened, and did she talk about it? And he was like, what are you talking about? And the priest was like, oh, well, your wife cheated on you or whatever. And then the husband was like, what are you serious? And then like started throwing her stuff out the window or whatever, and wanted a divorce from her wife and stuff. So that's basically the story that is going around on Reddit, and people are like posting the Chad priest meme, or Giga Chad in like a papal outfit or whatever, and it's just like, no, that's not, it's not cool, it's not base, it's not epic, it's just like a complete, basically that would be basically sacrilegious, right? Like to like promote the breaking.
it ruins every chance she has at ever going to confession again, because like now she just can't trust any priest ever. And like, what's going to happen the next time she commits a mortal sin? She's probably not going to confess it because she just has that fear in her heart. Like I remember hearing a story from someone in my parish who, when she was a little girl, the priest screamed at her and and yelled at her because she wasn't being loud enough in the confessional instead of just correcting her. And then she never went to confession again for like 15 years. So you can really screw up someone's spiritual life by doing something like this, and it's horrible. He should be excommunicated.
I think that he's automatically excommunicated by breaking the seal of confession.
Yeah, and by the way, like the only way you can appeal such an excommunication is that, so there are certain types. Some can be appealed by the bishop or the archbishop. This can only be appealed by the Holy See. You have to go directly to the Holy See in order to appeal that. That's the gravest level of excommunication you could possibly incur.
Right.
I kind of think this story is fake.
It probably is.
A little sussy to me.
Yeah, it probably is.
Also, guys, it's
fake.
Reddit.
It's posted in r/legal advice. It's posted in r/legal advice.
No, it illustrates like a point though, like that there's this like culture that doesn't think and it's just impulsive, and it's like, oh, based, like it's like, yeah, I mean,
it's not based.
It's not. I understand like where they're coming from, but it's not based at the end of the day. Yeah,
If it would be based if like it wasn't a priest, if it was like a friend of the husband or friend or whatever.
Yeah.
No. But well, I mean, if it was outside of the seal of confession, then yeah. But if you overhear somebody's confession, you're bound by that as well.
I think it's really cringe that like a priest breaks. Like if my priest ever did that to me, I would have such a hard time. Like
it breaks all trust. Yeah.
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 My obviously like I don't think any of the sins I've ever done are just as bad as like cheating, but like still.
But it's not even the point of whether the story is real or not. It's the fact that people are saying are taking it at face value and then acting as if the priest's action is good or based or whatever. Like it's just it's not.
Well,
I think too many Catholics are acting like
a lot of these people
they think they can interpret things for however they please.
And that's
a lot of these
people. Oh, God.
A lot of these people aren't Catholic. I mean, I've been looking at the comments on some of these memes, and it's like a base Protestant 1488 or something. Like this is not a faithful Catholic, or maybe it's some Sedevacantist person. But come on, can we really call him Catholic?
Right. PineSap, you were saying something. I think either today or yesterday we were talking in DMs or whatever, where you were talking about how a lot of these self-proclaimed Catholics or Sedevacantists or what have you, basically look at the church in a naturalistic way, where they just go by like what's going on a naturalistic level, on an earthly level, and don't like attribute any type of supernatural power to the church.
Yeah, I mean, their fundamental error, it's funny that they hate the Enlightenment because they think like a liberal, essentially, where they think that the church is like any other human institution that can just simply be corrupted and fall away and break away. And I think it's fundamentally why they're like so unbelievably sad, and why it's like a sad culture. Like I was in it, and it was horribly sad. I thought that like basically the institutional church was gone, and that like my SSPX chapel was like the only remnant of like the real church, and like maybe a couple other like good priests or whatever. And it's sad. It's like a really, really, really sad attitude. And the problem with it is that, they view the church like it can suffer from human corruption, that its doctrines or dogmas or tenets can be corrupted, that things can fall away. And when I started to look at stuff myself, I found that to not be the case at all. In fact, I started to read documents, for instance, from the like International Theological Commission. And one of them, when I was doing my research on Dignitatis Humanae, was actually their document that they put out in 2020 on religious liberty. And it was fantastic. It was like beautiful. Like I could have not been more well pleased with it. And I was like, I looked at myself in the mirror. I was like, I seriously thought that the Holy Spirit abandoned the Holy See. Like, anathema to my opinion, my former opinion. That's goofy, And that's not to say that, like, yes, there are bad bishops. Yes, there are bad cardinals. There always have been. There's always been bad bishops and cardinals in the life of the church. That's always been something that's kept with the church to the very end. Think about Judas at the Last Supper. This has been something, we've always had Judases in the church. That doesn't mean, though, that the church is going to fall away. how could you have someone like a, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to our holy fathers who were Borgias, but how could you have like a Borgia as pope that basically like bought the papacy, and you see no doctrinal corruption whatsoever at all, none. But it's like any other church, like the Eastern churches that like fell away or whatever, the moment that someone takes power like that, it's chaos. It literally like destroys their church, right? So it's like that was actually something that I looked at as an Anglican and fundamentally convinced me of the truth of Catholicism, that a pope could be even like maybe kind of morally inept, like in his personal life, and yet the gospel would not bend an inch. And I was like, this is the church that Christ founded by that. Yeah. Like from returning to that opinion from when I first converted, my life has never been better, because anything bad can happen in my life, and I know Rome will always be there. You know, even if the modern world attacks us with guns and planes and cybernetics or whatever, Rome will last to the end of time. And the only thing I have to worry about is being in communion with Rome and getting and praying to our Lord so that I might be received into the heavenly kingdom. That's it.
And I think we should stress the significance of Judas Iscariot more, because that was 1 in 12 of the apostles. That's 12% of the apostles, thereabouts. And he was a complete apostate. Like, he rejected Christ entirely, and yet he still had the office of apostle. And so, if God in his providence willed that would happen, then God in his providence can allow for other things, and it won't destroy the church.
Yep. True. And I think that people fundamentally misunderstand the power of the papacy, and that they either attribute too much power to the papacy that doesn't exist, like Protestants thinking that every single word that the Pope says, whether in private or as a private citizen or whatever, that we have to attribute as like infallible doctrine or something along those lines. I think that's really where a lot of it stems from, is that like just a fundamental misunderstanding and lack of knowledge according to what we believe. And unfortunately, I see a lot of Catholics fall into this trap too, where they just really don't know their own faith. Like, we had a Catholic come into our chat today that was saying that he was thinking about converting to Orthodoxy because he couldn't reconcile how he could see the Pope as a liberal and still remain Catholic. And it's like, it's just been like reiterated so many times that like the Pope can fall into sin as a private citizen. He is a man, but what the Holy Spirit guarantees is that he will never allow the Pope to bind something heretical or false to the universal church, right? So
it's almost puritanical in a way, where they think it's like 2,000 people are the last true remnant of true Catholics, and if you don't adhere to these exact specific beliefs, and if these people aren't perfect, then you don't have to listen to them. That's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, it's just ridiculous. And it's like, are you even Catholic at that point if you think the church can completely apostatize, and if you think like a bad thing, it's like the atheist argument, where it's like, if one bad thing happened, God not real. If one bad thing happened, church not true. It's like, it's caveman thinking, not in the based way.
Yeah, it's like it really, and you know what? I was thinking about this too, that there is such a correlation, not to make this political or anything like that, but there's such a correlation between critics of America First and critics of Catholicism that it's like really insane. That all criticism either comes from like purity spiraling or like a complete misunderstanding of like what like it's actually teaching. You know, like people criticize America First for like jokes that Nick Fuentes will make or something or whatever, and not look at the overall big picture. And then people will criticize Catholicism for like private statements that the Pope will make or whatever, and not look at like, well, does that really correlate to what the actual faith is teaching? You know, it's just, I don't know.
Yeah, it really boils down to, you know, does Pope Francis always make my favorite private statements or something like that? No, not admittedly. And, you know, I'll even readily concede, you know, his pontificate hasn't been my favorite pontificate of all time, and that's okay to say as a Catholic. But that does not mean that any less he is a pillar of the faith or any less of Peter than any other pope has ever been. And you know, iStage is rooted in that fact that it's like like the papacy will always endure, and even as bad as things get, it's like everything will come out on the other side. We really, the biggest thing that we need to, I think, worry about is just the life of the church. And I think the biggest thing that we can do so that that is not a problem is like, you know, even, and this goes for myself too, we as men especially need to start being leaders of our parishes. Okay. Like we can complain about like, you know, oh, Grandma Mary's serving out, you know, the literal body of our Lord. I don't like that. You know, rather than complaining about, let's get on those like liturgical boards and try and make it more, you know, what we want to see, right? Let's, you know, get involved in our parish community. Let's try and educate people and stuff like that. Because it's one thing to be kind of the doomer on the side and just be like, yeah, I don't really like this, you know, yeah, this isn't that great. But if we're just sitting there complaining all day, it's like, you know, is that making the change that we want to see? No. You know, let's get in there and let's actually try and affect a good change so that, you know, that we can see the orthodoxy and zeal that we want in the life of the church just spring forth. You know, let's get involved. Let's put shovel to dirt. Essentially.
So Adam Red in chat wants to know, what is the worst penance a priest can give? And that's actually a good question, because I know that like historically penance were way worse than they are now, because now you say like the most abhorrent sins and they're like, all right, say 3 Hail Marys and then you're good or whatever. But in the past it was like self-flagellation or like separate yourself from your family for 6 months. Like it was like really hardcore penance, and that definitely got softened. So what is like the worst penance that a priest can give? Is there any like actual answer for that?
There are some theological manuals and stuff like that about penance. Those are actually really old. Like they like go back to like the medieval era and stuff like that about certain penances that should be assigned or recommended. I would say that the most difficult penance that a priest could assign is like fasting or something, or like abstaining from maybe a certain activity, or, you know, something along those lines. I think that's probably the hardest. You know, priests can't tell you anything that's going to like physically harm you or anything like that, but something that I think challenges you spiritually is probably the hardest that they could do.
Based. All right.
But a priest couldn't command the penitent to perform some kind of like asceticism or something?
Well, he could in a sense of like saying, hey, I want you to like abstain from all meat for like the next 3 days or whatever. He could do that, but he couldn't tell you something along the lines of like, go and sell everything you own and like not have your house anymore. That would be kind of extreme.
So this is kind of a grug brain question, and probably something I should know off the top of my head, but let's just clarify. So when you go to confession and you confess your sins, the priest absolves you of your sins, but then he gives you penance. So are those penance to absolve you of the temporal punishment of your sins, or what like if he's already absolved you, what is the purpose of the penance? Is that to prevent you from the purgatorial suffering you would have to face?
So that's actually a good question. That might actually be an element of it. I want to look into that specific question further, but I would kind of maybe figure that maybe there is a little bit of maybe remission for temporal punishment in purgatory when we do those penances. The main reason is that it shows that we are actually penitent. Like if we are assigned a penance and we do it, it shows we're actually sorry for our sins. Because even though confession is hard, it is still kind of easy to just go in and say, forgive me, Father, for I've sinned. You know, I did X, Y, Z. And he's like, okay, you're absolved. And then we walk out. But to say, you know, have all that and say, I want you to pray like 3 rosaries or something like that. And that being something that we're challenged to do to show our love for Christ and our true penitential spirit, that makes it more effectual on us. That shows that we're really sorrowful for our sins. Because we have to remember that a part of a legitimate confession is having real sorrow for our sins. And I had a friend on Telegram ask me, like, should I confess sins that I'm not sorry for? I'm like, you're not going to have a valid confession.
Yeah.
You got to be sorry for it. You got to go in and say, and, you know, I'm intensely scrupulous, and I used to think that, like, feeling sorrow meant, like, I had to, like, whip my back, and I was like, you know, unless I'm, like, crying. Yeah, like, I'm crying tears of blood. It doesn't count. But that's not what it is. If you feel sad and you're like, you know, I really should not have done this thing, and it's awful and stuff like that, that is a contrite heart. You're good at that point. You don't need to like over-examine it. It's just if someone went up to you and said, "Are you sorry for doing this?" and you said yes, you're good. Go to confession. You know.
Is there any truth in the idea of self-flagellation, like you see in the Da Vinci Code, which is a blasphemous movie, by the way? Which funny story, real quick, is that I'm pretty sure I watched the Da Vinci Code when I was a little kid, and I was like, oh, this is just like a fun movie or something like that. And my grandma, who was like a devout Catholic, was absolutely infuriated by that movie and called it blasphemous and conspiratorial and all this stuff. And I'm pretty sure she wrote like a letter to the director or something like that. But there is this albino priest or whatever he is in the movie where for self-penance, I guess, that he gives to himself or whatever, he like whips himself in the back to the point where his back is like bloody and stuff like that. Is there any credence to that, like in the past, where self-flagellation of that nature was given as penance? Like, oh, okay, you did this sin, so now whip yourself 20 times or something, like to get forgiven?
Not as necessarily an assigned penance, as far as I know, not an assigned penance in the confessional. I don't believe any theological manual ever had that, but it was penitential in the sense of people choosing by their own will to go out and do that thing. And I will say that if you get approval from your spiritual advisor to do it, it's not maybe a bad idea. Now, you got to always be careful with stuff, never go too far, because like Luther, for instance, used to whip himself all the time. And look how he turned out, right?
Probably burning in hell for eternity, the worst person that ever existed besides Pete Davidson. Yeah, go on, sorry.
Yeah, well, the problem with Luther was he did it thinking that like God didn't love him, and you can't think of it that way. It's like you have to do it out of the love of God. You can't do it out of like a simple like I'm afraid of God, and myself, if I don't do this thing,
if I punish myself enough, He'll forgive me. Yeah.
Yeah, don't think about it that way. That's the incorrect thought. You have to think about it as like Saint Simon carrying the cross with Jesus. Like, I am carrying the cross with Jesus because I love Jesus. And yes, this hurts. And yes, this is unpleasant. But that's not why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it even to necessarily hurt myself. I'm doing it because I love Jesus. And I want to understand how my sin hurts him. Yeah. Right? Because I love him so much. Yeah. And that's what we say in the act of contrition, right? We don't say, not because my sins hurt me, but because my sins God, hurt you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think a thing that doesn't get talked about a lot is how Martin Luther was like literally mentally ill, where his scrupulosity literally drove him insane to the point where he was in confession for hours a day, and that he felt that he could never please God. And in order to, I guess, rectify his own mental illness, he had to completely create basically a new religion and separate himself from the church in order to like not feel the betrayal that he thought that he was given to God. Like it's insane. Like his own brothers in his monastery, or whatever they would be called correctly, would say that he was like, there was something wrong with him, like that he was like literally insane mentally.
Well, yeah. One of the biggest problems Luther had was that he didn't understand confession properly. So he thought that you would have to literally, like when he was leaving the confessional, he would remember some things that he forgot to confess, or I don't know, he'd have a sinful thought or something. So he'd go back into the confessional, and that's why he'd be in the confessional for hours at a time. But that's not how confession works. If you fail to name a sin, but you're still contrite in your heart, you are still forgiven of that sin, even if you failed to name it in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, as long as it's like honest and earnest. Yeah. Every time that I go to confession, I'll name like the sins that I know for a fact that I did, and then no matter what, at the end of my confession, I'll say for these and all of my sins, I ask for forgiveness, just to make sure that like I'm asking for forgiveness for the sins that I just mentioned and all the ones that I may have been forgotten at the moment.
And yeah, God knows every single moment of time. God has seen all of your sins, and God's willing to forgive you for them as long as you're contrite. But Luther had this kind of like an almost Pelagian idea where it's like he has to name every single sin. He's responsible for naming every single sin, otherwise he's not forgiven. And that's not how confession works.
To my understanding, like the way the confession works, insofar as like when you're naming your sins, is like Jimmy Aiken was saying that Jimmy Aiken Appreciator, I should say. Jimmy Aiken Appreciator was saying is that you can be general, although it is good to be specific, but you can be general about your sins. You shouldn't try to, I guess, obfuscate it insofar as like you should be more specific in order to receive a better spiritual advice from your spiritual advisor, from your confessor, and in order to get a better penance, so that you won't sin again. But if you're doing say if you're generally lustful towards women or what have you, like that is something where you can confess for it and it would be generally acceptable. It's not like something that's specific. If it's specific, like I cheat on my wife, you should probably confess specifically for that, right?
Yeah, you can be general. You can be general without being vague. Is
Yeah.
I think the point you're trying to make. Like you don't have to.
And also,
like
also,
what-
yeah, like you were saying, like with I mean, I'm sorry, but no, what you were saying with like with I should say absolution. Yeah, if you forget to say a sin, you're covered. But if you remember it, you should make sure you remember it for the next time and confess it. If you were to die and you forgot to name that sin, as long as you were earnestly sorry for it and you just forgot, then you're still covered. Yeah, like you're good to go. But you should always make sure that you name it if you remember it.
And that's for your own sake, so that you can get proper spiritual advice for the sin that you've committed, which you failed to name. Like if you forgot to say that you I don't know, lied or something, but it was like a small lie, and you totally should say that the next time you go to confession, because I don't know, maybe your priest can give you spiritual advice on how to stop lying. It's just something for your own benefit, but it's not as though you're not forgiven for the sin. Luther didn't understand this, which is why he was so scrupulous.
Your mic got messed up, by the way.
Oh, sorry.
It's also good to like go ahead, Bicep. You're good. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, and if you remember mortal sin, make sure to confess it at your next confession. If you forgot it at the original one, if you forgot it at the original one, you are covered. But don't leave it out if you remember it and you go to your next confession. Make sure to mention it. But if you just forgot it in general and you never remembered it again, you would still be fine. You're still covered.
Yeah. Also,
it's all about. Oh, I was just gonna say it's all about will. But go ahead, Spexo. Sorry, big guy.
Yeah. Also, I remember that like after I did a first couple of confessions or whatever, I remembered like really bad sins that I did like prior to me being Catholic, like when I was like an atheist, degenerate, promiscuous retard, right, you know? And I went to confession and I was like, I remembered like a bunch of sins that I did like in my past life or whatever. And like, I confessed those sins and my priest basically told me like you're confessing sins that like you committed when you weren't aware that they were sinful because you didn't have faith or whatever. It's stuff like that. And like, you shouldn't like, it's okay. I guess it's okay that like you are confessing those, but like, it's not like something that you should beat yourself up over because you forgot to confess them or whatever, because while you were in that sinful life, you were completely ignorant of the fact that it was sinful, you know?
So you're saying we have a holy obligation to name them?
Yes,
Very interesting.
That's what I was saying.
No, but yeah.
Hold on, real quick. I'm gonna go pee-pee mode real quick. So PineSap, try to keep this chat going. Get people to like talk from the chat and stuff. I'm leaving it up to you. I'll be back in like 5 minutes. All right.
You got it, big guy.
I've minute tea. That's
ICUP. I was going to mention though the book that I recently got called the Saints and Scrupulosity. I read the intro for it last night and like broke into tears because like it was some saint that simply said like everything done for the love of God, like God is like well pleased with. So it's like even if your entire life you never gave the best confessions or you prayed the best prayers or you prayed the rosary completely free of all distractions or something like that. It's like just because you showed up and you put in the work and you loved God, God will accept that. Like you're not going to be damned. And there was something so freeing about hearing that because like I my entire life have struggled with like a level of like perfection where I'm like, if I don't feel like I get it right, I don't even want to do it. I'm like, you know, if I can't get this right, what's the worth of even doing it, right? And to hear that as someone who's extremely scrupulous was like so freeing. and also that it's like essentially like spiritual vanity too. It's like being obsessed with thinking like I can do the best thing. It's like, no, like you can do nothing. Just let the Holy Spirit guide you, and if it's good enough, that is perfect. Not this
You're
like
a
false
man.
perfectionism.
Man, you're always gonna fall short. I mean, you can never do something that's entirely perfect, and so it's not like God's expecting you to be like God's not expecting you to be God, but God is expecting you to try your best and to do your best. But you're always gonna fall short, and you shouldn't beat yourself up over it. You know,
Absolutely, dude.
God
Absolutely.
is even pleased with imperfect worship because it's worship.
Yeah, that really reminds me of something I read from the Screw Tape letters, where like our demons want us to doubt things if we don't feel it. Like if we went and we did a confession to the best of our ability, but we don't feel sorry, like then we might doubt it. But it's like we need to trust the sacraments. I mean, like just because we don't feel it, we still need to trust the church and know that we are forgiven, and don't just because you don't feel something doesn't mean it's not valid.
I don't know if any of you guys were baptized as adults or anything, but I was baptized when I was 21. I'm 22 now. And so when I was baptized and I received First Holy Communion, I genuinely, and this is just a testament to remind you guys, if you were baptized as children or what have you, or if you don't remember the feeling, I literally felt as if I could die. I remember going for a walk and praying my rosary that same day, and I remember I said to myself, if I die right now, if I got hit by a car or shot, and I'm in like Philadelphia, so if I get shot, like that's pretty common. If I get shot right now, I would be fine. I mean, it's not to be presumptuous, but I said, I feel good to die right now. I could die right now, and I'd be A-okay with it, like completely. That's how I felt. I felt light as air, dude. I felt like I could fly. That's the power of the Holy Spirit. That's the power of the Holy Spirit, bro.
That's how I feel after confession every time. It's like after I get out of confession, I'm like, if somebody wants to kill me now, all right? Like, I'm good.
Pinesap, on that note, I have a question. What would be the implications? I mean, this is partly joking, but what would be the implications to hire a hitman to assassinate you at a certain time after you go to confession? And then
that would be suicide. So don't do that. That's some more said.
It's so over.
But what if you confess to it? What if you confess to the priest? You're like, "Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned, but I hired a hitman to assassinate me as soon as I leave confession."
Well, you're not truly contrite, so that'd be an invalid confession.
Oh man.
What if he assassinates you at a random time? So like you don't know if it's gonna be that confession that he's gonna whack you.
What loopholes can we go?
You can't treat God. Man, this is like the cannibal discussion all over again. It's like, can I eat a body in this case?
I was so disappointed when you said that cannibalism is a sin. Because I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, like I kind of want to know how humans taste, not in a sinful way.
I feel like you should repent just for that.
If somebody like died, right? And what if like my grandma? What if my grandma was like, look, when I die, I want you to eat my hands, right? And I'm like, I can't, Grandma, because it's against Catholic faith or whatever. So now I have to disappoint my grandma to stick to my faith.
Dog. The only flesh I would consume is our Lord.
Okay, so let me give you another hypothetical. What if your grandma said, "My dying wish is that you go and you unload a clip of M1911 on just a crowd of innocent people"? It's like you should disappoint your grandma. You shouldn't.
So you're saying that I have to serve God before serving my grandma. All right, even though it's her dying wish.
Yes, dude.
But I mean, but I mean, all right, it's her body. Like, okay, we're like Catholics are allowed cremation now, right? So at the resurrection or the final judgment, right? Like even the cremated are going to be made pure and like they're going to be reunited with their body, right? So like if I eat my grandma's hand, like it's going to come back. It's going to come back from my digestive system.
Actually, like I'm joking around, but important note, actually cremation is not like allowed. That's not like a
Let's
like a
go.
no-no. Like you
go.
shouldn't be cremated.
What do you
So
mean?
like you
It,
should have a full body burial.
Well,
Hashtag
no, but it
rot
is
in the backyard.
it's an allowed thing in currently, like I guess prudentially or whatever, Catholic cremation. Because my grandma, who was like a devout Catholic, she got cremated. Cremation is permitted for Catholics as long as it is not chosen in denial of Christian teaching on the resurrection and the sacredness of the human body. Yeah, currently cremation is allowed.
There are prudential reasons that this was allowed is because during I think the 60s there was like an overflow of, it was like following World War II essentially. There was an overflow of dead bodies, obviously because of the war. And because of the overflow of dead bodies, there was sanitary what's the word I'm looking for, implications in burying a bunch of people. So therefore, it was allowed to be cremated. There are also technically, if you, I mean, people will like kind of like scoff this off, but it's true. Like both my parents were, or my grandparents rather, were Catholic. My grandfather was a devout Catholic, and we had to cremate him because we could not afford we couldn't afford a funeral because it's very expensive. And this was during the recession, 2009, 2010. And because of that, like it was either between like destitution or literally burying our grandparents. And that's not an excuse, like an emotional excuse, but like let's just say like if you don't have the intention of like spreading the ashes or doing like something funky with the ashes, like something ridiculous, if your intent is simply to lay them to rest, even if it's in the future, in a Catholic cemetery on consecrated ground, then that, to my understanding, is valid. Or I should say, it's allowed. It's allowed.
I think Trent Horn talked about it. How like the reason that cremation was banned previously was because it was like, well, when the final judgment comes and you're supposed to be made complete with your body or whatever, and your soul is supposed to resurrect with your purified body or whatever the case is, that if you're cremated, then your body is like decomposed or like completely scattered or whatever, and therefore like there's no body for your soul to go back in. But the reason that it's allowed now is because God is all powerful and he could create that body again even out of ashes.
I would say this isn't a, like, that might have been the case for some theologians, but I can say that it's a first century opinion, or a theological opinion, I should say, that like no matter what happens to the body, as long as you're not directly disrespecting it, the power of God is almighty, and therefore, like, so example, like, there's a book, it's Saint Justin Martyr and Saint Athenagoras on the resurrection. It's two different works together. And they use a lot of Platonic philosophy in it to basically help you understand the power of God first and foremost. But also, he goes into specifics like, what if you were literally eaten by a wild animal? Like the bones are crunched. This is going to get a little graphic, but the bones are crunched. Your body is crunched up. You're literally pooped out by an animal, right? Well, it's the same. It's almost the same thing as like if you were to burn the ashes of the body. It's the same thing. So therefore, like. Or even like, what if you're burned alive in a house fire or something? To my understanding, one of the reasons, at least, that could be the reason later on, but one of the reasons it was banned was because pagans would burn the bodies of their people, because one, it was kind of a ritual they had already, but also because they explicitly rejected the bodily resurrection.
Well, yeah, this was the main reason why it was condemned, because you had certain pagans, like Native Americans, who'd burn their dead so they'd be one with the Great Spirit, whatever that means. And it was an explicit denial of the final resurrection of the body. But the reason why it's allowed now is because most people aren't doing it because they're denying the resurrection at the end of time. They're doing it for
economic
pragmatic
purposes,
reasons. Yeah.
Well,
so,
so
it's totally different. Go ahead.
Also, I would, thank you. I would just like for pragmatic reason, because the funeral industry is real and it is pumping prices up. Like it's in considering funeral prices now, like we're going to be burying my uncle's going to be buried. He died recently, but it's in Jamaica. And they don't cremate people; they put them in caskets. But still, it's still quite expensive. And then even then, like, yeah, same with.
I'm sorry to hear you lost your uncle, dude. God rest his soul, man.
It's one of the evils of the modern world where it's like you can't even get a burial nowadays because people are so predatory that they have to, what's the word, corporatize everything. Like they have to make money off of everything, literally everything. People, you don't need to make $10,000 off of a funeral. You'd probably be economically fine.
I'm pretty sure
it also just makes sense that like, we're only going to accept bodies that are fully stored. Those are the only ones that are going to be capable of getting to heaven and being reunited with their body at the final judgment. It doesn't make any sense because there's been numerous times throughout history where bodies have either been burned or completely decimated beyond recognition. That like, you're going to say that like even though they were faithful Catholics or whatever, that because their body was made in a way that is unrecognizable, that they're not going to be able to be fulfilled in Judgment Day. It just doesn't make any sense. So I think that it is a completely appropriate way to say that like, okay, even if you're cremated or whatever the case is of your body, that like you're still going to be resurrected at the final judgment.
Wasn't Saint Joan of Arc burned alive? Like, her body's completely
Polycarp was burned alive, and Saint Ignatius of Antioch was eaten by lions.
Yeah,
that was a thing that I just read in The Fathers Know Best by Jimmy Aiken, which is that I think it was Saint Ignatius who is the first one recognized as using the term Catholic to describe the Church of Jesus Christ. But because of the way he said it in his writings, it is implied that was already a term that was widely accepted and used among the Christian faith, meaning that even prior to the 2nd century, which I guess is where St. Ignatius's writings come from, that Catholic was already used to describe the unified Church of Jesus Christ.
And Protestant was not used, so
naturally.
Checkmate.
Not until 1514 or something, 1572.
1517.
1517.
Well, I guess you can make arguments like the first Protestant was Jan Hus, but I disagree with that. The first Protestant was pretty much Martin Luther.
Yeah, there were the proto-Protestants like Peter Waldo and Jan Hus, but it's kind of funny because like all of them, I thought there was like some book or something written where like basically like every single one of the proto-Protestants literally like did what they did for like money or power or whatever.
I know Waldo did, but Jan Hus, I think most of that was like a misunderstanding because his biggest thing was emphasizing in the Middle Ages you didn't always have the blood present. Like nowadays with most masses, you don't need the precious blood to be present for it to be a valid Eucharist. But in the Middle Ages, it was very uncommon for the precious blood to be presented at Mass. And so I think Jan Hus, like he was like, well, it's not a valid Mass if you don't have that. And there were some political things in Bohemia at the time, but most of the Protestant ideas of the Hussites didn't come out until Hus's successor, so it wasn't even really good.
Yeah. By the way, people that are in this live chat, you're free to unmute yourself and contribute to this conversation too if you want to ask any questions.
Or ask questions.
Static. I know you were talking before, so if you want to unmute your mic and talk, you're more than welcome to. This is a completely open forum. It doesn't even have to be about Catholic theology or anything like that. Like any questions you have for Pine Sap or I or whatever. You know?
Got it. Yeah, I'm just liking the conversation. What was I going to say? I was going to say something.
Your soft voice is so soothing.
Thank you very much. But what's your guys' take on the whole Blake Masters thing when he was assaulted by like a registered child rapist? That happened recently. I don't know if you know who he is.
Is Blake Masterson the guy that said like black people are like the responsible for the majority of like gun crimes or something?
Yeah, and he got a lot of flack for that. Well, he also looks like
yeah, he does. He's also not super pro-Israel either, and he's Trump endorsed.
Based.
But
is he Trump endorsed?
Yeah, he is.
Oh, based. I mean, I didn't hear anything about him until Nick posted that thing where it was the ad from the guy that was like disavowing him or something, saying that he was like
Yeah,
a
he's
racist anti-Semite or something like that. So I mean,
yeah, he's
just from the superficial things that I've seen from him, he seems extremely awesome. But
he's
What's
voting
kind of
for
funny is like
Senate.
whenever like there's ads like that, like he's a racist, he's all these things. It's like, dude, sign me up to vote for him. You know,
really, yo,
it's like
it's so,
you think
you know
that
what's
would
annoying?
work like 20 years ago, but it doesn't now.
You know what's annoying? It's like people like the term racist is so overused and annoying, and it's like as Catholics we have to be so nuanced about it because racism is like a condemned sin, right? Like if you're being like racially idolatrous or whatever, you know, but like the way that it's used now, it's like based. You know, it's like oh, you're acknowledging racial biological differences or like predispositions to characteristic behaviors. Like, yeah, that's true, 100% true, and does not conflict with
really
Catholic
funny.
teaching at all, you know. So it's like
That's really
That's what the
Sorry.
left does. They take terms that used to have meanings and they just destroy
obfuscate
them.
it,
And then
yeah.
yeah. They
Yeah.
say like anti-Semitism is any criticism of Jewish people at all. Or
Like,
racism
it's,
is any
really,
attitude
it's really funny.
Those
'Cause
people
I
don't
remember when I was
exist,
in,
you bigot.
I remember because when I was in the Catholicism Discord server, I was like I had one night where I was just popping off about like just what like the issues black people have, and then they stopped me from like they muted me, and then they said you can come back into the server so long as you don't talk about race, because I refuse to back down from saying I don't think I'm not going to pretend that all races are all the same and they act all the same, and I'm not going to back down. I'm going to double down actually on calling out black people for their lack of self-awareness
Well, I think
and blaming of others.
Yeah,
I think it'd be
it's a very
hateful.
nuanced take that Catholics have to take, and also Catholicism or whatever. That's a meme page that I followed for like literally years since I became a Catholic, and they post a lot of like great memes and stuff. But like I've heard of a lot of like weird things too about them, that they were like really heavily pushing the vaccine and stuff. So I don't really know what to think about them.
The
They
Discord server is
they-
kind of degenerate because you have
yeah,
a lot
the
of
Discord
mods.
server. Sorry.
You have a lot of mods who get like power trips and stuff, and like they believe certain things. But I know some of the guys from Catholicism, like Brian, and
cool.
they're faithful guys. They're cool.
Brian,
I hate
yeah,
to say it, like this is gonna sound very rude. Discord's just like full of like pedophiles and like weird
It's
people.
true.
Like
Yeah.
I legit like
Unreal.
left all the servers I was a part of. The only one I'm in still is like Fizzy's, who's based knighthood on YouTube.
I got banned for
He's
that
a great
one.
dude, but like I love being a part of his server, but like I left all those servers because like people on there are like really weird and
Well,
off.
they named the
The
website
power trippers,
Discord.
dude.
They named the website Discord, and Discord is not a good thing. Like sowing Discord.
No.
I mean, what can you expect? I mean, there's a lot of spiritually, like I've made a lot of friends on Discord and that, and I'm not knocking that, but it's just like the way the website's designed, people just get power trips, and then they like people have this kind of like autistic obsession with things that happen on Discord, and I don't think.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yep, the moment to become Discord mod. Sorry, I'm just gonna quickly get my last digs in on Catholicism because I kind of got a bone to pick with them because they lied about me and they used an old screenshot before.
Who is talking right now? So I
agreement
can
I
let me hire your mic. Who's talking right now?
It's
Oh,
Mike.
What?
I thought mine was. Oh, I thought my thing was low. Hold on.
Who's talking?
It's Mike.
I just booted,
It's me.
or not
Yeah.
booted. I like lifted up his volume.
Yeah, because it doesn't show who's talking on my screen for some reason.
Oh, okay. No, I was just gonna say like I'm just gonna get my last digs in here because they're like I have a bone to pick with them because they lied to get me banned by using a screenshot before the agreement I mentioned with the mod team. And also the thing is that their mods are very power trippy, and it's just like, bro, you literally moderate it. You moderate a Discord server. It's like you peaked in life. Like the Catholicism is full of losers. Like except Brian. Brian's pretty cool.
Is he the main guy?
But like,
Yeah, Brian's
yeah,
Brian, Cruz, and Ricardo are the people who run the account.
and also the reason they what's it called? They're like on their last leg. They were on their last leg with the strike because people didn't know like they were posting anti-TOS friendly memes or whatever, and then they're getting all autistic about stuff being Like they're a bunch of robots. You're gay. They're homos.
Well, I don't know to what extent, I don't know to what extent the Instagram, the people who run the Instagram are involved with
That's
the
where I
Discord
follow them
server.
most.
No.
I
No,
mean,
it's
that's
not
where
like
I know.
Ryan.
I only know them from Instagram. I'm not on. I mean, I'm not really like active on Discord at all. I haven't looked at my Discord in years. So,
Well, but
That's
the
probably a
Instagram
good thing, Spexo.
But on their Discord, I remember when I was on their Discord, they let like a tranny in or something, and like they were like nobody be rude to her because we're trying to. At a certain point, I get it that we can't just like kick people out. We do have to evangelize all people, even people we don't like. But they were like cucking a lot, and they were saying you can't criticize transgenderism at all because this person might leave the server. It's certain threads. I don't think it's the whole mod.
hold
But
up,
It's like James Martin tier stuff, dude, and it's like that only serves to actually like make that person just commit suicide because they will. If they keep going down that road, they're just gonna commit suicide because they're gonna be whacked out of their minds on chemicals and all this like crazy stuff, man. And like the idea that like this is how they were created by God, or that like you were created by God as a homosexual is absurd to me.
yeah,
It
you're
is absurd.
basically saying God made a mistake or something.
You were saying that God like made
contradicts the magisterium
Yeah.
too, because like pastoral care for homosexual persons literally says any effort to depict that orientation as like a positive or good thing is condemned.
Yo, Chad is
Like,
Chad is saying that you look really frustrated, Prime Sap. Are you okay?
Oh, I just was frustrated by that like Troon story. It's like it's gross. Like
Yeah.
the only way that like someone like that would ever be like allowed in my chat is like if they're like, yo, I made a huge mistake and I'm like trying to like actually get out of this. I would readily help someone in that situation. I'm not gonna help someone who's like, yeah, guys, so I'm like a tranny, but I'm like based or something. No,
You can't
get out.
validate. You can't
I don't
validate
wanna talk to
those
you.
false identities, and that's what a lot of people. And I want to talk about that a little bit in a little while, especially pertaining to like James Martin and stuff, and like validating basically these LGBT identities that is just completely antithetical to Catholic teaching. But somebody asked, is it okay for Catholics to shave face hair and body hair? I mean,
Yes.
yeah, I think that'd be okay. I may be a little weird. It's like that meme.
Yeah.
It's like that meme where he's like confessing and he's like,
yourself
yeah,
in
it's a little
shaving
weird,
cream.
but not sinful.
I want to ask something real quick
Glory and shine,
to
shout out.
anybody in the chat
What's
or
up?
anybody that's in the VC.
What's up?
What's your do you guys have like a new take on Elijah Schaffer right now compared to before? I think he's come a long way from his original, like back in 2019 when he was cringe. I feel like he's more based, but not totally there yet.
Yeah,
I don't follow him.
I don't know
I don't
what
watch
I don't
him.
know what his religious ideas are, but I know that he has definitely gotten more based in terms of like secular. I mean, not secular, but like just ostensibly right wing political stuff, like where he's willing to be open to like better ideas and stuff, and he seems to be very based on like traditional ideas of like the place of women in society and stuff, and I think that has largely to do with him allowing John Doyle in his atmosphere or whatever, you know. So I think that
All the time.
he's definitely not like he's not an enemy. He's definitely relatively an ally, I guess. But I don't know if he's fully there on the whole Catholic thing, you know. I mean, my whole view
by the
is
way,
that.
I was just gonna say, anytime that John Doyle, bless you, anytime John Doyle isn't on that show takes a nosedive, because anytime that he's not on that show, he will have like some. I can't remember who it was. He had some awful lesbian on there, just like the
He had
worst.
trannies
Like
on there too, didn't he? Have like some trannies on there.
Maybe like Blair White, that dude.
Oh, call by his real name, Robert.
My gosh, Blair
His
White.
real name's Robert.
Blair
Robert,
White is
Robert,
like one of
Robert.
the worst things that happened to the internet, honestly.
I think you might have had him on, but I'm not sure. I know he.
You saw Alex
But,
Jones
like,
did an interview with Blair White.
Fucking scariest.
I don't.
He
I look,
Sussy,
I love Alex Jones. Like, I mean, obviously he has his boomerisms, and I don't agree completely with everything Alex Jones says or whatever. He's definitely more libertarian than I am. But like, Alex Jones is definitely like is the word arbiter that I'm looking for of like the right wing, like perpetuating that right wing internet, culture or whatever. But I love Alex Jones. Don't get me wrong. But he did this interview with Blair White, and like the whole time I'm thinking like you're just doing an interview with this person, like, and you're not even acknowledging the fact that they're like a transsexual. Like if I was doing an interview with Blair White, the whole time I'd be like, bro, you're a dude
Alex
dressing
Jones
like
caught,
a guy.
Wasn't Alex Jones caught watching?
Yeah, that was a whole
Is that
thing.
true?
I don't know.
Is that true,
Yeah.
or is that like a Nick
That was
Fuentes
an
thing where it's like a
ironic-
fucking
No,
side
I mean, like,
Real.
that seems to be the case. Yeah, I remember that back in like
Nick was
2016.
Nick, the whole Nick thing was fake, but with Alex,
Well, no,
I think it was
because
real.
Yeah,
because
let's
if you
talk about that real quick. The whole Nick thing, by the way, the whole Nick Fuentes watching like tranny porn is completely fake and like proven fake, right? And one thing I'll say,
These people. Oh, go ahead.
all right, one thing I'll say is that, like, first of all, it was completely proven faith. It was like that Maximilian guy or something that was like creating a fake Nick account, and he had this planned for like a couple of days beforehand. By the way, not to like flex or anything like that, but like I'm in a chat with Nick Fuentes, and every time that he makes a new Twitter account, he tells us what his new Twitter account is, and also he has like a private Instagram that he posts all his new Twitter account, his Twitter burner accounts or whatever. So this whole thing about him watching tranny porn is completely fake. But hypothetically, right? Let's just in a completely fantastical world or whatever, say that he was caught doing something degenerate along the lines of watching pornography in any form, right? That still would not deter me from supporting America first, right? Because everybody falls short and does degenerate things in their private life, right? As long as you are not promoting these things and justifying these things, then there is no real like judgment that you can give to these people and say like, oh, you did this one degenerate thing, so therefore I'm not going to support the movement that you are perpetuating that has all of the values that I espouse to have. It just makes absolutely no sense, right? So like if somebody was caught watching porn or caught doing something degenerate, as long as they're not justifying it or trying to say like it's okay, like Fulton Sheen I think says that like a Catholic can be the worst sinner as far as anybody is concerned. But what a Catholic does not do is justify their sins or condone their actions, right? So, I mean, obviously it's completely fake and stuff like that. But even hypothetically, if it was the case, it would not be a reason to deter you away from the America First movement, in my opinion.
But the bigger thing is that it's not true, and it's just calumny that these people are spreading. And there's no wonder that none of these people are Christian who are criticizing Nick. Like they're all fat.
The worst part is like, the worst part is that it's like people who are like all. Besides that, there are people who are really good Christians and really good patriots. But this is the one thing that for some reason it just leaks in, man, and it's disgusting, dude. Like you'll have people who are like called like, I don't know, like St. Paul respecter or something, and then they'll like just literally be spewing calumny. And like, yeah, I give you the benefit of the doubt, but if I like present you with like evidence that this is false, you have to be charitable, especially to a fellow Catholic, a fellow Christian, right? And that's the thing, by the way. That's a different thing. You are allowed to an extent to not give as much. You still have to give charity, but you have to give more charity towards a fellow Christian, a fellow Catholic.
Yes.
You have to get it's a duty of a Christian. Right,
Yeah,
but when I present this,
the people that are against Nick and America First, it's not they're like the weirdest.
They don't care if it's true or not. Honestly, they don't care whatever any rumors that fall. They'll just completely go completely with it.
You know why they're called?
Do you know why?
Right? You know why they're called Wignats? They're called Wignats because basically, like, supposedly they agree with us on a lot of things. Yeah, society's decaying, but they're called Wignats because they're basically just like stupid, like they're just stupid people, right? They're very ignorant, they're very stupid, and they're just low IQ. And it's like you said, they don't care that this is fake, or they don't care that they're spreading lies, or they don't care that, they're literally like, I don't know, like they'd rather accept some like based racist tranny rather than like some
Honestly,
I would like to ask, like, these people that espouse to have, like, oh, we believe in white identity and we believe in the demographic shift and this Zionist blah blah blah. Okay, what is the alternative to America First? Who is making the waves that America First is? Who is getting Tucker Carlson to adopt these
Richard
talking
Spencer,
points?
bro.
Who is changing the complete talking points of Charlie Kirk and TPUSA? Who is doing all of these things and having events where 1,200 people are showing up, youthful people that are screaming "Christ is King"? Who else is contributing to the political change insofar as America First is? Nobody, right? So what is the alternative? So if I mean, like, it's just ridiculous, and this is why, like, I'm so like,
it's.
Hold on.
National Justice Party, dude. National Justice Party.
Honestly, I have this theory that National Justice Party is just like a money laundering scheme because they lost their like payment system or something like that.
The alternative, I'll tell you the alternative. The alternative is we make based Hitler videos, and that's how we win the suburban mob.
We make videos. We make videos with black suns in the back and like.
Speaking of that,
hold up, everybody. What's that? Static. Go ahead, Static. Hold on.
I love when I talk. Everyone likes to just talk at the same time.
Go ahead, Static.
It's annoying. But anyways, I don't know. Anyways, I don't know if you remember Spexo, but I think it was in PineSap's chat or in our chat. There was this one 17-year-old kid that was just spurging out about how we should embrace fascism and being fascist.
I'm glad you brought that up. Let's talk about that real quick. Let's talk about that. So this kid came into our chat yesterday or the day before or whatever, and he was basically saying how fascism is the only way forward and we need to embrace fascism and identify as fascists in order to push the ball forward and stuff like that. And I was giving him a sincere answer and trying to explain to him that if you're identifying as fascist, you are not a serious political person, because regardless of whether or not the church is condemned fascism, which it has not, and ostensibly, if you look at the definition of fascism from Mussolini's own words, obviously nothing that is said in there is wrong or whatever. But the fact of the matter is that people view fascism as synonymous with evil or authoritarianism, and that's the big bad thing or whatever. Nobody like knows what fascism means in like the mainstream. And if you identify as fascist, you're basically going to have to put yourself in this pigeonhole where you have to basically explain why fascism isn't as bad as people think it is and why it's actually a good thing. And then even if people agree with you on why it's not a bad thing, they're not going to want to identify as that because of the connotations that it implies among their peers, right? So this kid was basically arguing that we need to identify as fascist in order to push the ball forward, when in reality, identifying as fascist is basically the same as identifying as like, oh, I just consider myself evil, and you need to identify as evil in order to push the ball forward. It's retarded. Fascism is an anachronistic 1930s ideology that has no pertinence to modern society, and the best way to describe yourself, if you have a political, like if you're a serious political person who wants to have like political goals or whatever, the best thing to identify yourself as is either a paleo-conservative or a nationalist. Because if you identify yourself as a paleo-conservative and somebody says, what does paleo-conservative mean? It means like, oh, well, I'm like a traditional conservative, I believe in traditional Christian values and maintaining the family and order and blah blah blah. Or if you're a nationalist, that means that I want my government to push the national interests first among any foreign interest or whatever the case may be. If you identify as a fascist, you might as well identify as a Nazi or a communist or something like that, that people already have this predisposition to like think about what it already is. It's absolutely retarded.
Problem. That's why these people that counter Synod Nick are basically they're
just retarded. They have no understanding of political
they're making themselves into a character.
Hold up, guys. This Mike guy had his mic off.
Right.
What?
Yeah, there's another problem, I would say, because what is fascism is such an ambiguous term. If you say fascism, you're referring to Italian fascism, but there's also phalangism. Basically, in the interbellic period, in the interwar period, there were so many movements that were actually Christian nationalists, like what Franco had, like Salazar had, like Engelbert Dollfuss had, and another Christian nationalist. What is fascism? Because only Italian fascists were calling themselves fascists. We had I'm from Romania.
Yeah, it's like
we had
like we understand like we actually understand what the term fascism means or whatever, but it's irrelevant because the vast majority of people equate fascism with like the epitome of evil. Like even Tucker Carlson will use fascist synonymously with authoritarianism, you know. So it's just like it's like terminology is important, and that all contributes to the idea of optics. And optics is not about lying or like you know, using subversive tactics or anything like that. Like it's about
again,
like putting your message in a way that like attracts people and is like palpable or palatable to normal people, that attracts them, you know. It's like I'm a Catholic monarchist. If I had my way, it would be a literal Catholic monarchy. But I'm not going to like describe myself as a Catholic monarchist to somebody that I'm having a political argument with, because that's just not a realistic. That's like you're just LARPing, right? So what do I say that I am? Well, I say that I'm like a paleoconservative or a nationalist. Like I believe in pushing like that our citizens and the interest of our people should come first. That's what I push as like a political ideology. And these people just don't understand that. And this kid was basically saying like, oh, after high school, I'm going to create this fascist movement and we're going to create a new neo-American revolution or whatever. And it's like, bro, you're just retarded. You're not a serious person.
No,
let Mike.
Yeah, let Mike talk though, because Mike, you said you're from Romania.
Yes, I'm a Christian nationalist from Romania. We have a party.
Let's go.
It is now only 10% who is Christian nationalist, and we're trying to change the country. It's really hard here in Eastern Europe. The progressist propaganda is so big. Even today, here is a very big LGBT 4,000 people march that will start today, and it's everywhere. Everywhere, the progressism, progressism will not stop until the last village in Africa or in Siberia will be having this propaganda. What I would like to say is that the three tenets of Nick Fuentes, reactionary, Christian, and nationalist, I think these are the things that we should make our marketing on, because so based. First Christian, because Christ is king.
We only
nationalism
get
because
people.
we should be patriots. We should be nationalists with our nation, of course. And the third one, reactionary, because well, it used to be great. Yeah, we used to be a really Christian civilization. That is no more now. Now neo-paganism. Everything, this materialism is really neo-paganism. Europe returns to its paganism once again. And if you read, I would want the listeners to read a book by a Spanish priest, very based Spanish priest. Liberalism is a sin. And he tells in that book that Protestantism is now a dead dog, but liberalism is an enraged, an enraged lion that wants to bring Europe back to paganism. And we have this.
Yep.
We have a Western materialist society.
It's so funny that you say that.
Can we get an O3? Can we get an O3 in chat for Father, Son, Holy Spirit? The O3 Serbian salute. Let's go. O3 in chat for based Mike from Romania promoting Christian nationalism. Let's go.
That's awesome.
Thank you. Also Byzantine Catholic.
Mike, can I ask you a question?
Let's go.
Byzantine Catholic. 07s in the chat.
O3s. We don't do 07s anymore. We're O3s. O3s. Serbian cross. Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Yes. O3. Let's go.
Also, Eastern Catholic sign of the cross. Let's go.
Yes. Also, Michael Jones
Eastern Catholic brothers here.
Roman salutes allowed.
Come on.
Oh, what were you saying, Mike?
I would encourage you all to watch Michael Jones. Whenever I go to gym, I put Michael Jones, and he really has it. Also, classical taste here on Cozy is really great. By the way, I didn't believe that I would find any other distributist in Romania, but after after knowing some friends, I've discovered another Byzantine Catholic who is distributist, and we want to start a distributist society like they have in Italy, and it's very based. I don't know if you know Rod Reher. He came in Romania, and I've asked him, what is the most happy and the most based community that he has seen, because he has a book on I don't know if you know Rod Reher on based communities, and he told me like there were some based Protestant, some based blah blah, but the best one was the distributive society in Italy. I encourage distributism. Distributism would go so great with Catholic monarchy.
Yo, Pinesap,
because distributism.
Explain what distributism is, because I know that it's like a Catholic economic belief, I guess. All right, yeah, let's go. Based Romanian.
I actually want Mike to explain it because I have kind of a hard time explaining it. I can explain corporatism, but let Mike explain it.
Like, explain what distributism is.
Okay. Every time I talk about distributism with a normie friend, he says, "Oh, what is that? Socialism or something? You're redistributing everything in the society." I'm like, no. It's based on Rerum Novarum. It's based on Quadragesimo Anno. These are based papal books, papal encyclicals. And if you read them, well, they are very based. They are saying what the economy should look like. Because we know this capitalism that we have today is not really the best economy. We see that. We see how bad it is. Well, actually, I would encourage you to also read Chesterton. Chesterton is one of the fathers of distributism. So what is distributism? Basically, socialism is wrong. Also, today's capitalism is wrong. Why is socialism wrong? Because it's basically state capitalism. Basically, the communist state was like the 1% who was ruling everything, but they weren't saying this. In Romania, we had one of the worst communists. Well, capitalism, why is it bad? Because usury. E. Michael Jones has a great book on that. I would encourage you to read E. Michael Jones, yeah. Well, distributism is a society that is not vulnerable to crisis as capitalism is and as socialism is. The state doesn't have so much power; it's more decentralized. Basically, what is distributism? Is to have communities that are interdependent with each other, in which you also can have distributist industry, and you have the best example is in the Basque country. Have you heard of Mondragon? The Mondragon cooperatives. Well, in the Basque country, it was they were so poor because they lost the war. They were on the bad side. They were with the anarchists, with the communists in the Spanish Civil War. Have you heard about Spanish Civil War? I think yes. Well, in the Basque country, which was destroyed, there was a priest, a very intelligent priest, who read the Rerum Novarum and who talked about Rerum Novarum, very base priest. And he had four guys of my age, something like 20 years old, and they wanted to have logos in life. They were so poor. Everything was destroyed after the war, and they wanted to build something. And with a priest who told them about distributism and about Rerum Novarum, about Quadragesimo Anno, about what distributism actually means, these four guys bought fabric, I think, some very old, very ruined fabric in the Basque country, and they reestablished it and they made it better with the distributist principles. Which are the distributist principles? Every worker shall own his property, his own property, his own means of production. Every worker shall have property. Basically, distributism is the economy of property. Because what is rerum novarum and quadragesimo, especially talking about, is the need for property. In order to have a really good social order, in order for the woman to stay at home and to teach the children, the man has to work enough and to have his own property, to be independent, basically, in order to bring enough for his family. Well, these 4 guys, only 4 Catholic guys, made such a great cooperative in industry. So it's possible even in industry. Many say it's only possible in agriculture. Chesterton was only talking about agriculture. No, in industry. And now the Mondragon cooperatives in the Basque Country have like almost 50% of the entire economy of the country. Distributist Mondragon. Well, with this progressist New World, I've heard that some progressist ideas have corrupted the cooperatives, but they were founded by base Catholic priests, and four base Catholic workers, and they really did a very great thing on it. Also, Taiwan. Do you know Taiwan? Nationalist China, real China. They were in big trouble. They were in very big crisis. A lot of Han Chinese who have gone out of China because China became communist, were all in Taiwan. Well, that was a big problem. There were so many people in such a little island. So, well, what we should do if we take liberalism, it will not gonna help. We will not do much thing. Well, they've looked on distributist ideals, and they made a distributist industry and a distributist agriculture. They gave property to every man, and they rebuilt the country so great. Also another.
So all right. So what is distributism in comparison to capitalism and socialism? So if socialism is like equalization of distributing wealth or whatever, and capitalism is basically free market society or whatever, what would you say distributism is?
Is cooperatives, is more workers putting together with their property and having their own property. And I would also say that the church, in monasteries, there was a lot of distributism, because in many monasteries you had a landowner in the kingdom, and there were serfs, they were slaves. But you had the monasteries in the kingdom which let people have their own property from the monastery property. So basically distributism is property. I have a meme here. It's from a distributist server that is explaining, maybe it can explain all of this, but basically is the best economical.
So this says that distributism is the theory or practice of distributing private property.
No, I have it. Just a bit. So what is bad on socialism and capitalism is concentration of power. What distributism takes from socialism is the regulation of economy, which is important and which is based. What it takes good from capitalism, distributism, is private capital. What is distributism? Is based on Christ, on the family, is the economy of families. Distributism cannot build itself in a society that doesn't defend the family. That's known. It's charity. It's also charity. And corporatism, which was the economy of Christian nationalists, which is based on quadragesimo, was also having a lot of charity funds. But real charity, not what we have today. Not Soros charity. Fair wages, independence, private property, level playing field, widespread ownership, tradition, trust busting, pragmatism, subsidiarity, fair
I think
trade.
capitalism with a good culture can work. Like if we lived in like a very traditional, very virtuous society, I think capitalism could work because, like, in theory, like the richest people would give a lot to charity, right?
Yeah. So
Uh,
my theory.
Also,
I would say
I
that
would
Sorry, we
want to
have
say
several
one
people
one
talking at once.
Hold
one
on.
more
One
thing.
at a time. One at a time.
Uh, another name for distributism is localism. They've came up nowadays with a new name for distributism. Basically, is local economy. Is based on local economies. That's why it's so based, and it's so great against crisis, because if you have an economy based on local producers on small businesses, then a crisis as we had in 2008 and 8 that destroyed a lot would not have so much power, because all the economy is not so interdependent. You have your economy is local. Basically, localism is great.
So my opinion on economics is that it's literally like the most boring subject pertaining to politics in the world. Like I just literally just don't care about economics at all. But if I had my utopia, or if I ran the country, my economic policy would basically be that the economy works for the people as opposed to the people working for the economy, meaning that it wouldn't be, I totally completely reject economic absolutism in terms of socialism or capitalism in any regards. I think that it should be a relatively free market society in terms of people being allowed to open their own businesses and things of that nature, but it should be only allowed within the framework of Catholic morality, that their businesses should operate within that framework. And I think that if there is a lack of goods, or some type of economic recession or something where there's not enough resources to go around, that there should be some type of socialistic policy where people are only allowed to get like let's say there was a shortage of oranges or anything or whatever, that okay, if there's a shortage of oranges, then people are only allowed to buy 5 oranges, God bless you, 5 oranges per person or something along those lines. I think that similarly, that if they're going to open a business or whatever, there should be a maximum and minimum wage, that there shouldn't be allowed to be this excess of wealth or anything like that. And there should also be a minimum wage where people that are working and contributing to society should be able to support their family and to support a lifestyle that they want to live, all within, of course, a Catholic moral framework. That would be my thing, that it should be like basically a changing economy, not based on absolutism, depending on the circumstances.
So basically just Catholic social teaching on economics.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the distributivism is essentially that. It's exactly what it is. It is a hybrid model that is structured basically around that the economy is something that works you don't work for the economy, but rather the economy works for the family, and it must be Christ focused, as everything else in the world must be Christ focused. And if you're going to have an economy and this is why I say that, like I was going to say regarding can you have a virtuous capitalist society? And I would say when you in the 1950s, you did not have a virtuous capitalist society. You had basically a hard protectionist society. Even before that, you would have a hard protectionist society as well. I see the icon as well. Yeah.
I think
and so
it's irrelevant whether.
I think that if you are promoting, I'm not saying you in particular, but I'm saying the promotion of capitalism in and of itself is a social degeneration. It will inherently bring social degeneration, because it to even have the marketplace of ideas, or the idea that you can the best thing will win, right? The best thing could be something that is actually inherently awful for someone's soul.
Yeah.
For example,
do you think my opinion is correct then? That it should be a changing economy based on what's best for the people?
The basic economic unit.
Yeah. So and that's
capitalism is the individual, right? Supposedly, but that's the thing. If that idea and instead made it so that the basic economic unit is the family, because you need a strong moral foundation before you can have economics. Economics is just the what like the decisions that you make with the limited resources you have to bring about sustainability and whatnot, right? But like prior to that is obviously like your virtue, it's morality, and that's why like the system is inverted, because the idea is like, oh well, the individual can make any choices, but that's like just a brooded kind of nihilism, right? It's like you don't have any responsibilities towards anyone, not to yourself or society or your history or your future. It's just, well, you're an individual, you can do whatever you want, right? It's like Ayn Rand kind of objectivism, nihilism. But that's like, but if we took that kind of, because regardless, like how is it that we get abundance, how is it that we get prosperity? Well, it's by people putting, getting to hard work and
Yeah, and there's
to do
nothing.
that, you need a motivation, you need an incentive to like make money, to produce wealth.
But one of the main points of
Capitalism somebody's mic is messed up. Hold on. Somebody's mic is echoing. Hold on.
I think it's Mr. D.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. One of them. Go ahead.
Yeah, this last thing, like, yeah, I do think that like the reason why capitalism, at least, is I do think that it's a very powerful system that motivates kind of abundance, right? Like the reason why we have all this abundance is mainly because essentially it's people's kind of self-interest, maximizing, right? And of course there has to be limits to that, but the moment you put limits, it does kind of demotivate people to produce, right? To get the hard work and whatnot. Because in communism it was like, well, you do the bare minimum and you're going to get paid the same wage, so that's why they were starving, right? That's why they were starvation. It's not because of like communism is inherently flawed in theory, but because in practice, if you're going to get paid the same amount of money for doing the way less work than your neighbor or whatever, then you're going to have a starvation economy.
Well, I think one of the biggest problems with communism is that it's too worldly, right? Like, I think that you can perfect the state of man.
It's materialistic atheism, honestly. That's what it devolves into ultimately.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't. Going to be flawed, and men are never going to be perfect, and men are never going to be able. I'm sorry, until we're in heaven, we're never going to be able to perfectly work together. And so,
okay, now wait a second. You were talking about capitalism, like promoting abundance and everything. Like that we have abundance, but I would argue that we don't have abundance. We have wastefulness. There's not, because abundance, like there are still people that are starving. There are still people that are disproportionately hurt, and like by the actions of others and the greed of others and everything. So we have abundance supposedly because some of us can afford to live lives of abundance and of plenty. But there are far more people that are struggling like heavily. So I don't think we have capitalism, wastefulness. We have a lot of things, and they get wasted and they get thrown away. And they're only there for our own satisfaction. So I think maybe capitalism can drive. It can drive.
The mechanism is very powerful, right? Like the idea that you can.
It can drive innovation. It can drive the creative processes that bring us new things, good things.
Yeah.
But I would argue that it, at least in its current state, does nothing, very little good other than presenting people with outlet for sin and vice, and while mistreating other people.
Well, that's why I think that economics divorced from morality is what you get today. But if you integrate that innate desire that we have, because you can't take that away, right? You can't remove the desire for self-maximizing, for innovation, for profiteering, for venture capital. Like, you can't eliminate that. So what you have to do is integrate it within a framework that is Catholic.
I think you have to regulate it, honestly. I think you have to regulate it.
Not just regulate it, but like integrate it in a system in such a way that like the most genius, like someone like Elon Musk, right? Someone like Elon Musk with his like innovative genius and entrepreneurial kind of drive, Faustian spirit, blah blah blah, right? He would use his qualities, his natural God-given talents, and integrate it into like a sort of like pour all that energy he has into something that's actually worthwhile and moral and can benefit all of humanity. Well, I'm not saying he's not doing that currently, or maybe he is, maybe he isn't.
Bro, he's
depending on how you see it,
he's
right?
paying for his workers to go out of state to get abortions. He's not doing that, all right?
Yeah,
he is not,
I just
he
don't.
Is not,
I simply like if you look at capitalism, like if you look at capitalism, I mean, it's yes, there you can argue that like Adam Smith did build it. He tried to build a moral framework in order to give this system of economics to humanity, like to basically spread it out in humanity and implement it when he developed it. Although he didn't develop, I shouldn't say he developed it like by himself. He didn't like invent it, but he formulated what we would today call modern capitalism to an extent, right? But regardless of that, I think that the principles by which that capitalism are founded upon in Adam Smith and in other like this of similar thinkers, it's just not moral. It's an amoral system. It's simply focusing on the production of goods, right? It's simple production, right? It's not moral. Like if you look at what capitalism has brought, it's almost the exact same thing that communism wanted to bring in a different sense, insofar as like it's egalitarian. It believes that women can work. And both of them believe women can work.
Look at the things that we hate about communism, that the atheism, the materialism, all of this like godlessness that we claim to hate. And then look at the current society that we live in that is apparently capitalist, and where we have promoting pride parades in every single corporation.
It's the same thing.
It's the same exact thing. It's just of a different coin. It's just a different way to get to the same end goal.
But that's why I argue
in socialism.
Go ahead.
In socialism, you have the state. In capitalism, you have the corporations, the oligarchy. This is the forever problem of nowadays capitalism. It's oligarchy.
Well, the reason why capitalism exists in the current way it exists today is because they're entities, right? They are groups of people who are completely divorced from any sense of like metaphysical kind of reality, right? Like they're after the French Revolution. It was really the banks who took over, right? And this is like the current system that we have, pretty much proceeds from that. And so like the real kind of issue here is not so much like the idea that we should produce goods, because like economics is amoral. You said it, right? It is amoral in the sense that
No, I said capitalism is amoral. I said capitalism is amoral.
Right. Sure, I agree, but that's because economics itself is
no, I don't think capitalism. I don't think distributivism is amoral. I think distributivism is in fact a Christian.
I think
system.
I think economics can be within a moral framework. I don't think economics.
But like whether. Okay, so whether you decide with your time and labor and effort to produce a company that makes I don't know, rosaries, right? Or whether you choose to make with your labor, time and effort to a company that makes like you're a pornographer, so I don't know, some degenerate crap, right?
But that's what I'm saying. I don't think the country should allow those companies to exist. Like I think a country should. If we have a Catholic country, if we have a Catholic country that operates under Catholic morality, it shouldn't be allowing companies to make dildos or something. It should be only allowing something that operates.
I agree. Yeah. And that's why I think that like you should allow people to have that entrepreneur spirit, but like within the framework and integrated
regulated capitalism.
That's distributivism. That's distributivism.
Sorry, Roasties. We're banning OnlyFans. We're banning OnlyFans. Sorry, Roasties.
We're banning porn. We're banning OnlyFans. We're banning divorce. We're banning.
See, one of the major principles for why like unionization and like cooperativization is stressed in distributivism is due to the fact that it's trying to get a household to be a one-income household. That's the whole point. Because when you have a capitalistic system, right? Even if the people are moral, eventually that race to the bottom, or actually the race to the top, either or. I can't remember if it's race to the bottom, or race to the top off the top of my head, but the race to liberalize, right? To get less pay, right, is going to inherently incentivize women voting, and it's going to inherently incentivize women in the work field. That's exactly what they did. That's exactly what they did
If you have,
in order to drive down our wages.
Basically, if you have capitalism that does not have a regulated Catholic moral framework, then profit becomes the bottom line, and that's where you get materialism from.
That's what I'm saying. That's basically what I'm arguing, is that you should just create it into Catholic frame. And here's the thing, right? Like you cannot kind of regulate away, right? Like the natural desire to basically self-maximize, right? That's something that's why I think capitalism is a better suited framework, because it is realistic about the fallen condition of man. Like Adam Smith said, that man is basically a self-interested animal, that his rational choice, rationality, the center for rationality is the ego, like what benefits me. And
I just don't agree with
right?
this. I just don't agree with this.
But no. But taking into account the fallen nature of man, and because this is so, right, we can kind of orient, like we can kind of like work around that, because the reason why communism fails, one of the main reasons too, is because it basically takes the opposite view, that man is inherently good, and that the only thing that taints him, or like kind of makes him bad, is society or others, right? Is like the social conditioning. So like basically like animals, right? Like kind of like a Pavlov sort of entity, that like as long as you have the right inputs, you can get a man to do whatever you want, right? But I think that
the whole conversation is over my head.
Where's Pine Where's Pine Sap? Why does he keep muting his mic and turning off his video camera?
Where is Pine Sap? You know where he is?
That's because
Pine Sap, what is your economic position?
Because Telegram was running for so long.
Pine Sap, what is your economic position?
My economic position is really, I think, what the church teaches, which is essentially called corporatism, meaning that like workers and companies order and sort of these like not corporations in the sense of like how we think of corporations, like
guilds,
actual businesses, but yeah, like voting blocks essentially, where they essentially work out like their issues like a family would work out their issues, right? So that's what I believe. I just believe in Catholic social teaching. All my positions now are like, I'm just Catholic.
Yeah, exactly. That's 100%. Whatever the Catholic Church teaches, whatever economic position, social position, anything, whatever is going to bring people towards Catholicism, that's what I believe.
I just have the grudge brain take where I'm like, this whole discussion's over my head. I'm retarded. I'm never going to understand it. Why don't we just have the
honestly,
Catholic
just don't think you can force charity, right? Like, like you can put a gun to someone's head and say, like, be a good person, give this poor person money, and you're only going to do more harm than good.
Yeah, but that's not what it's saying. That's not what either of them saying. I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
It has to respect the free will of the person, because this is what Christianity is, respecting the free will of the person. God is respecting our choices.
Right, but free will is made so that we choose the correct path. Where we have free will so that we can freely choose to serve God.
Well, I think that the state should help the poor and the invalid, like it was for Franco, in the Francoist state. By the way, Pine Sap, you were talking about corporatism. Did you know that because of Opus Dei kind of corporatism in Franco Spain, Spain had the second best economical growth in the whole century after Japan.
It was called the economic miracle.
Yeah. El milagro español.
If anybody isn't familiar, what happened was basically after World War II and the Spanish Civil War, Opus Dei came in. Opus Dei, founded by Pope Pius XII. I think he's venerable or blessed.
Oh wait, you mean Saint? Do you mean Saint Jose Maria?
Was it Saint? Didn't Pius XII confirm it?
I think he confirmed it. Yeah. Venerable Pius XII.
Yeah.
There's a good movie on him, by the way.
Yeah, he confirmed the order, And in fact, Opus Dei went in and basically, with the help of the Franco government, which was inherently people who like crap on Franco. This is a whole tangent of mine. If you disrespect Franco, you're basically throwing Pius XII under the bus. And you're in fact
Franco respecters in the Catholic Hangout.
You are throwing a lot. You are throwing a lot of good Catholics under the bus as well, including Franco. But anyway, just the point.
He's a saint. He's
So,
a saint. He's in heaven.
Yeah, and many saints, many martyrs of the church. So, yeah, they went in and basically they installed corporatism, which was basically I shouldn't say it's kind of like fascism, but it's the same principle where it's the lucrative merger between the church and the state and the economy, right? And the economic growth and the recovery was outrageous. So you literally had Opus Dei running the economy and the government. So it was one of the. So I like distributivism, but I really like Franco's government.
No, yes, I think they get both together.
Let's figure that out first. Whose mic is echoing?
Well, mine not.
Is it mine by any chance?
Mine not. What I would want to say is that distributism and corporatism go together because you had Franco Spain, and the whole Franco Spain was basically corporatist, and you had the Basque country, which was distributist, and they were going together, you know.
Yeah,
in the same
I would say
period,
that when you describe like corporatism and you describe distributivism, if you like were to lay out the points, they're kind of the same thing.
All right, so let's.
Well, basically,
go ahead.
I would say that corporatism is a bit better than distributism because distributism is for rural areas, especially, not only but especially. It's localist.
Like, why?
It's impressive how you roll your R's. Let's.
You guys, I would want to ask something.
What's up?
Do you guys remember? Do you guys remember the village of your great grandfathers?
Yes, actually.
The village of my great
No.
grandfathers.
Yes.
I mean,
I've seen a picture of it. Yes. He was
because
Romanian.
that's distributism. Because that's
remembering the village of your great grandfathers is distributism.
Well, it's part of
the village of your great grandfathers. Well, the whole economy before the French Revolution and before the Industrial Revolution, the whole economy was basically localist, was basically distributist. The agrarian economy that was in the medieval era.
I don't think my great grandpa was around for the French Revolution.
Yeah, let's try to move on from this economic discussion because it's retarded.
No, because I'm gonna say this last thing, like, because I don't think distributism can like happen in America. That's why I guess.
Everything that we're talking about is a complete LARP anyway. Like America is just like an Enlightenment neoliberal hellhole.
That's what I'm saying. Like no.
Yeah, but you can rebuild it. You can rebuild it.
I mean, we could discuss what we want to work towards, of course, but I mean, like,
let's
be real.
Right.
Let's be real.
Yeah, that's why here's the thing, right? Like, if you look at commercials from like the 1980s, 1990s, you compare them to like commercials nowadays. It's just night and day. Like there's a certain sense in which, like, even back then in the 90s, there's still a sense of like innocence and like sense of like morality and proper conduct and. You know, and that's why I think like we should be aiming like the real battle is the culture war. It's a spiritual war. It's not really in the realm of economics. It's in the realm of the culture war because even back then, like, you know, America was sort of unmitigatedly kind of capitalist. Yet there was still a sense of like morality among the people, because of course the media and the corporations are only going to reflect what they think society is going to approve of. And back then the commercials were like kind of wholesome, kind of innocent. There was still like the sense of a traditional family, mom, dad, children, you know, and the commercials, the corporations were kind of abiding by that sense that the society had, like, which is still had instilled a sense of like morality and traditional values and.
Tell me if you guys tell me if you guys agree with this, because I've been thinking about this lately. Now, obviously, we can talk about the Protestant Reformation, and then, of course, the 1960s sexual and rock and roll revolution and all that stuff like that perpetuated this degenerate culture that we have or whatever. But I feel like something really like switched, and like there was like this crazy everything just changed like overnight in 2012. Like 2012 seems like everything just switched from like, yeah, we all had this relative morality where like, yeah, we understood that homosexuality was still like sinful and taboo and stuff like that or whatever. And then in 2012, all of a sudden, all of this transgender stuff, all of this like insane stuff just started becoming normalized and more excessive. I don't understand what it was. I don't know.
Obama.
I mean,
I honestly
it might have
think
been
it
Obama.
has to do with like YouTube. It has
Obama.
to do with YouTube and Facebook.
Mobamba.
Well, maybe it was like the internet culture or something.
President.
It was
Yeah,
just-
yeah. I unironically think
the internet,
it
the
has to
internet
do
helps
with.
a lot of people. But the
Like,
thing is,
one at a
like,
time,
this is like weird, you get
Yeah,
these weird people get groomed online. Like look at a Discord server, okay? That would not exist prior to 2012. And so, like a lot of
Look, here's the thing: the internet. Here's a reason why, and I think I've been thinking about this, right? I think the main reason why, because I've witnessed this myself in my lifetime at least. It seems like everything's just completely like accelerating, and it's just like plummeting, right? A total free fall in terms of like quality of life and morality or whatever, right? And I think the reason why is because the internet is essentially just like the revolver, the great equalizer in terms of like the who has a voice and who has an opinion, right? Because if you look at someone like these like degenerate leftist freaks, right? Like these like dysgenic freak looking kind of like weird looking people that like have all these weird ideas about the world and human nature and stuff like that. Like most people wouldn't give them the time of day in a normal context, right? Without the internet, they would just think they're freaks and they would be ostracized. But the thing is that the internet has given them such a powerful tool for them to like amplify their voice and people to take them seriously, because online really like the only thing you have is how rhetorically powerful you are, how witty you are, how able you are to get your ideas across and convince people and argue, right? It's pretty much all you have is you have a personality, right, online, and you can be whatever you want. You're not like a socially ostracized freak that you would otherwise be because of how you look and how dysgenic you are, and and so like it's really the social media, right, that has caused this, I think, because it's given them a voice.
Huge. Because
the example I turn to is Reddit, because like you can find any sick, twisted fetish with its own subreddit on Reddit, and it's like these people who would be bullied and ostracized normally, and rightfully so, for their disgusting perversions.
Yeah,
could form their own.
I think overall it was just the internet culture becoming more popularized in 2012. I guess maybe that's when like the epitome of it happened, was in 2012, where like everybody had the internet since basically 2007 when smartphones were invented or whatever. But like 2012 was when like, okay, everybody is online, everybody has an opinion and can just tell their opinion to everybody now, and it just allowed the most degenerate, disgusting people to have a voice.
It was basically and what happened was because these freaks, right, that had like these perverts and freaks and just bad people had the ability to spread their message to mostly like young people who are very impressionable. The corporations took notice of that, and look, the culture is changing rapidly, so we have to like go back to the drawing board and start reflecting that changing culture. And that's why, again, right? But right now, I think we're seeing a bit of a pushback. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I think that especially in like amongst young people, I think there's a bit of like a pushback against this kind of like total free fall.
Real.
I think that the pushback is going to get accelerated too as well as time goes on.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, because I wanted to add, because I can kind of attest to this, because I grew up I had internet access since I was like 8, like probably 7, 8, and I remember like before the age of social media, and like it basically was the internet still was degenerate back in the days of like early 4chan and whatever. I didn't go to 4chan when I was a little kid, thank God, but like but like it was basically the internet before social media. A lot of it was, before the nerds and the geeks and the weirdos would go to like the comic book store, and then when the internet came along in the late 90s or whatever and became more accessible, they would have their own niches and forums. Like I grew up on the internet when it was still kind of like the last bit of the wild west of the internet, where it was like you can get on like a chat room or whatever, and then like it wasn't even as bad as like it wasn't even as bad as like a lot of like
Isn't it
Discord.
crazy how like this is not a coincidence, the fact that almost every like major Discord server or like Twitter moderator, like almost all of them are like these like fucking degenerate freaks and trannies and like child molesters. Like it's not a fucking coincidence, right? Because like
do you know like where like this strange like homosexual and deviant kind of stuff originated originally? Do you know what the original social media site, like back in 2012, around that time, even before that, do you know what that site was?
Tumblr.
It was Tumblr. It was Tumblr. Yeah,
What?
it was Tumblr. Tumblr. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's Tumblr. So
you're telling me that are you telling me
Yeah,
that like the Tumblr people migrated to Facebook or something?
Yes, yeah, they did. Yeah,
Twitter.
100%. Yeah.
Facebook and
So
Twitter.
Tumblr was like because like you have like a blog, right? So you would have people, they would have it amplifies their blog, and you could follow the blog or whatever, and they would literally just groom people day and night on there, like literally. They would post like, oh, here's like my experience with like being a freaking transsexual, like freaking Sasquatch, right? And then they would also like they would be like, oh yeah, you're a transsexual Sasquatch, I am also one of those things. And they would literally groom people. And it was at that time it was 8-year-old people, it was 12-year-olds. And
Dude,
so
it's so funny how
those people would move over to Facebook, to Twitter, to Instagram, and now that's where, and especially because of Obama's second term, where he was able to give carte blanche to anything he wanted to do. He was able to just ran through stuff. So
I remember, it's so funny, dude. I remember like not being interested in politics until like social media. I feel like we were almost forced into like having this interest, not just out of self-preservation, but also because I feel like it's because of these people, these kind of just people that essentially want to subvert every aspect of society, of human nature. Like, yeah, like there's no right and wrong, there's no man and woman. Like everything is like so distorted with them, right? That even like I don't know, what was that whole thing with the gamers uprising with fucking feminism?
Gamergate. It was Gamergate, yeah.
Gamergate.
Right. I was
Actually,
around for
that
Gamergate
kind
as
of got
well.
me involved in like politics, was Gamergate, because I got tired of like video games being infiltrated by all that crap.
No, that was the first red pill for a lot of people. I mean, that's where it began. I think like we recognized this phenomenon that was happening in our community. And maybe not all of us were explicitly Catholic back then, but we see all these things where it's like men are constantly under attack, like common sense is constantly under attack, and then so I don't know, it's like the tool they use to push all this transgender nonsense on everyone, or all this gay stuff on everyone. I mean, it's become their own bane, because it's like people start seeing that, and a lot of people, because God is still in the hearts of all men, a lot of people see that and they just have a natural guttural reaction to that, and it's just
so true.
That's where we true.
I remember
thank
the
God.
guy
Honestly,
who originally
maybe God providentially ordained Gamergate. You never know, man.
the guy who got me involved, like originally, like in politics, and started to like get me. This might like, it's probably cringe or whatever. It's not Ben Shapiro, actually. The guy who originally got me involved in politics and started to like make me dislike leftists was Sargon of Akkad.
Bro, no. For me, it was H3. And I know he's literally like a Zionist Jew, and his wife was part of the IDF.
But I remember him making actual like funny content and like actually being essentially apolitical.
We all begin
before he
somewhere,
turned.
right?
I mean, that's why it's called the pipeline, right? Because everybody has a pipeline that they get to like actually finding the truth, and unfortunately, people get stuck in that pipeline, or they take that pipeline to somewhere that is just completely radical and just retarded, like the basically the Wignats, right? And but there is this libertarian pipeline towards like more right wing and honestly Catholic understanding. Like I used to like Ben Shapiro, Steven Crowder, Stefan Molyneux, all those types of people. I remember watching them like basically religiously during like the 2016 election, and then eventually I found like Nick and E. Michael Jones and Jared Taylor and things of that nature. So I think there definitely is a pipeline. It's just unfortunate that people get like stuck in that pipeline. They're too fat to get through.
It's the same thing with the faith too. Like Taylor Marshall, I hate to say it, Taylor Marshall has helped me a lot with some of my religious questions. But it's like he calls the Pope Bergoglio, and it's so cringe.
Dude,
God,
that's how they refer to him in European countries,
I
bro.
hate that
He's
so
not a
much. Oh my
heretic. What?
Same with Father Altman. Everybody's like all about Father Altman. Father Altman is basically openly disrespecting his bishop, not respecting the authority that has been like given to him or whatever. And
he said if something wasn't infallible, he wouldn't obey it. That was just ridiculous.
That's literally like Ignaz von Dollinger kind of thing.
Do you guys not like Taylor Marshall?
No, we do not like
no, we don't.
No,
yeah,
not really.
He falls into calumny.
He's part of the
I think he is like a good guy politically, but I think that ecclesiologically and also like as a person, insofar as his behavior is just like really bad. His ecclesiology is whack.
He's become the biggest apologist.
Who asked about Taylor Marshall real quick? Who asked about Taylor Marshall if we didn't like him?
I have no idea. I just joined back.
Who was the person that asked if we liked Taylor Marshall?
I'm not gonna confront him.
It was Mr. Z.
Something very important.
Yeah, he's basically become the biggest apologist for sedevacantism, whether he knows it or not. And like, we want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt and think that everybody has the best intentions because that's Catholic teaching, but he has been confronted and refuted numerous times by very popular YouTube channels and other people on the online eCath sphere, and he has basically just blatantly rejected to confront them or acknowledge those refutations. And it seems like he's the only realistic observation that you can come to is that he's acting in bad faith and is basically just doing it for profit and clout at this point.
Every single Catholic, every single formerly Catholic, EO, apostate, Eastern Orthodox person who like converted from Catholicism that I have met watched Taylor Marshall. Every single one, without fail.
Probably a lot of
Sedes. Like the online Orthodox though, like the Ortho Bros, like they're.
I think he's probably helped more people become sedevacantists or Orthodox or the erroneous resist and recognize and resist sect or whatever than he has helped people actually become faithful Catholics. And I won't lie, he has been one of the people that helped me decide on Catholicism, but so has Vatican Catholic, so has Lee Strobel, who is a Protestant. So that doesn't really say much. I mean, you can take good things from people that aren't completely good, but I think Taylor Marshall currently is just completely acting in bad faith and needs to be corrected, or at least acknowledge and confront a debate with people that are refuting his erroneous positions.
God can pull good from bad things in His providence.
So I wanted to
honestly, but I think that that there should be like something like sort of like, because I'm not a Catholic yet. I mean, I'm looking into the faith, but I think there should be like some sort of like protection, or not protection, maybe like some sort of order that the Catholic Church recognizes that essentially wants to protect and safeguard like the sort of
that's the magisterium
aspects of the liturgy and the.
Okay, I mean, I think you're really referring to the magisterium, which cannot be broken or led into error. We have the magisterium guided by the Holy Spirit, which the faith does not change, and we have a clearly designated and strict faith. It's just that people that are popular online and stuff seem to obfuscate it and lead people into error, and people don't understand how to, submit to the magisterium, basically.
If me and Spexo were corrected on any point of anything that we have said, and you can show a clear magisterial statement, me and Spexo would change our opinion unequivocally. I would change my opinion overnight.
Yeah, facts. Yo, exactly. Like that's what I say all the time. It's like if I believe something and I have an opinion on something, and then like the magisterium or the Catholic Church condemns my position or something, then I change my position. My position is what is in line with the Catholic faith. Like that's it. Like I don't like
if you can literally go to Pope.
I respect that. Yeah, no, I totally respect that, and that's
the only. A lot of the problems with people like Taylor Marshall. Oh, is someone else speaking?
Somebody needs to fix their mic. Hold on. We gotta figure out who is this echo, because it's like really bothering me.
Is my mic echoing by any chance?
It's not
Here,
you. No.
Everyone talking on mute.
Hello.
It's static. I think it's you.
Hello. Among Us.
It might be.
So is it my mic?
Hello.
Yeah,
it is your mic. It is your mic.
Hello. Oh no.
All right. So I think one of the big problems I have with people like Taylor Marshall is that they're very, I hate to say it, like Americanist with how they approach the liturgy. It's just like, I choose what the liturgy is, and I choose what this is, and I choose what that is. And there's nothing wrong with having preferences, right? But he's like, if the church doesn't submit to my will on all things, then I'm going to leave the church, or I'm going to criticize the church. And it's like, who are you? Who are you? You're some layman. You don't have any orders. Oh, you're a doctor. Like, who cares? Okay? You're not a priest.
Yep.
You don't have the right to keep constantly criticizing the church, okay? The church doesn't submit to your will. The church is the church, and the church is fine without your criticism. And it doesn't mean that you can't, like, constructively criticize the church, but you can't just constantly lambast the authorities of the church and say they're all wrong and you're right because you're Taylor Marshall and you know better than your bishop.
Well, I think that to a certain extent, I mean, to be fair to him, I can kind of see where he's coming from, given that it does seem like, at least since Vatican II, right? Like there has been like a sort of seeming concerted effort to kind of have the church get politically involved with all these secular causes, like civil rights and environmental justice and blah blah blah, and all this like kind of astroturf sort of new world order satanic political causes, right? And when the Pope speaks like, oh, it's a moral obligation to get the vaccine, or
right there what you're doing is you're completely taking stuff out of context. The CDF released a statement. That's not what he said at all. That it was completely corrected. And that's another thing, that people take what the Pope says as a personal citizen or whatever as like infallible or as magisterial, and that's just not the case. When the Pope was talking about that, he was saying that if there is something that is good for the common good, then it should be seen as a moral obligation for people to take. The CDF released a statement clarifying that said that any type of vaccine or anything like that cannot be forced on people, and that has to be a personal decision based on their own conscience. So that's the type of thing that Taylor Marshall does, where he promotes this type of thing where you just completely don't look at things in the grander scheme of things, or you personally interpret things that the Pope says without looking at the full context of things.
By the way, regarding
I want to interject real quick. Hold on, let me interject. You said the church since Vatican II. Marshall's already got you with that framing of Vatican II bad. It's responsible for all these errors and stuff. I would challenge anyone. What is something that you can cite from Vatican II?
I'm not saying there's errors. No, I never said there's errors.
I know you're not, but what I'm saying is Marshall's trying to get you to think that way.
Oh, I just think that it seems like the church has been more actively trying to like abide by these like secular causes, like tolerance and say no to environmental injustice, and nature has rights and democracy and all this kind of sort of astroturfed, secular, nihilistic new world order causes, right? And it seems like obviously the Pope kind of like, well, in the media, at least like he's some sort of like progressive hero, right?
Well,
like
that's
the thing. And that's the thing.
All right, hold on one second. I'll let you respond after, but let PineSap respond to that.
Got it.
Okay, that's the whole thing. He's got you thinking that way. You got to stop watching him. He's got you in this framework. I used to literally think that Laudato Si, the document from Pope Francis, was heretical. It's not. There's not a single point of error in it. And he's actually completely correct. Like, our world is being destroyed by these corporations and stuff like that. Literally, like, destroying God's creation. And that's the whole encyclical. He's not promoting earth worship or anything like that. He's saying that like these corporations, these governments are literally destroying our world, which I have seen in real life. This is completely true. This is a huge problem. On top of that, too, the whole tolerance thing and democracy and what have you, again, it's totally Marshall framing it. I mean, St. John Paul II, who is pro-democracy because of what he experienced under communist oppression, said, I'm pro-democracy in the sense of like, it representing like the common good for all people. But he clearly condemned the idea that anything that a democracy votes on makes it good. That's a condemned idea. And the church has never been, again, anti any particular political system. She is pro whatever political system accomplishes her mission the best. If it's democracy, it's democracy. If it's a monarchy, it's monarchy. Doesn't matter. So, again, my friend, you just got to stop watching Marshall. He's got you thinking all these erroneous ways. And if you do that, it's going to put your heart in schism with the church unintentionally. I am a living example of what he almost did to me. Do you know, did you know that because of his influence, I started attending a Society of St. Pius X chapel, and I was so low in my faith, I literally thought of leaving the church for Greek Orthodoxy. I'm not even kidding. That's how bad he almost destroyed my faith. So I will destroy, this might sound intense, I'll destroy Marshall before I let any other person be destroyed, like I almost was by that man. Like what he does is horrendous.
And you also have to remember that the current pope
literally destroyed Taylor Marshall.
One sec. You
have to also remember. I'm not trying to like.
The current pope,
I'm just trying to like see where he's coming from, right? Because I don't think that, like, okay, either he's, yeah, like you said, he's acting by faith, or there's a certain sense in which you can see, for example, like how study or statistics, like there's a certain sense in which the Catholic Church
all right, look,
decline ever since Vatican II, right?
All right, there has been poor catechesis. There has been subversive members of clergy that have clearly pushed a improper agenda and are essentially heretics or acting in bad faith or whatever. But in terms of Vatican II, of the documents, there is nothing heretical or bad about Vatican II in and of itself. You can say that there has been a crisis since Vatican II because of the aforementioned things that I just said, but to say that Vatican II caused all these problems is just simply insincere and not correct. Also, you have to remember that the current pope is under more scrutiny than any pope in history, right? The media is constantly trying to take what he says out of context or misinterpret or mistranslate what he's saying and try to push their own agenda with it. And you have to realize that even if the Pope says something that is imprudent or something that it has ambiguity or anything of that nature, that what he says as a private citizen does not hold true to the faith in general unless he is speaking ex cathedra and trying to make some type of papal infallible declaration, which he has not done. Right? So
or ordinary magisterium as well. We need to state that as well. So like it's not always infallible, but it could be like Laudato Si is ordinary magisterium. It's not infallible, but it's still something we have to obey and assent to.
Right. Could I say something?
Sure.
Who was the individual that mentioned Taylor Marshall?
I thought it was you. I don't know. I thought
no, it's Mr. Z. It's Mr. Z, which we're not trying to rag on you, Mr. Z.
No, we want you to be part of the true faith. We want you to think like in correct terms. We're not trying to like bash you or anything.
No. I appreciate that. I'm not, and like I said, I don't sort of follow. I agree with everything Taylor Marshall says. I do think of what he says is like exaggerated, like that one. Regarding the. I do think like he was kind of like it was like idolatry or whatever. It was just a statue. I mean, I don't know. Like it just seemed like overblown and.
Can somebody correct me if I'm wrong? There was a time when, do you remember when the latest encyclical came out from Pope Francis?
The what encyclical?
The latest encyclical by Pope Francis.
Traditional.
No. Excuse me. That's. I don't think.
The motu proprio.
No. Fratelli Tutti.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember Brothers All? Okay. Do you remember when that came out? If I recall correctly. And correct me if I'm wrong. Do you remember the video we made about that?
Yes, I do. And
Do
he
you
called,
remember?
and he said that the
Do you
fraternity
remember?
that-
Do you remember? I mean, cut you off. Do you remember when he talked about liberté, égalitaire, et fraternité?
Yep. I was just
Do you
about
remember
to
what
say
he
that.
said?
I was just about to say that.
He says, without providing any context whatsoever to what he's saying in the encyclical, he simply says that Pope Francis endorses that.
Even
you remember
though, yes, and even though Fratelli Tutti literally just teaches to live in peace and harmony with other people, which is literally just a Catholic
No.
teaching.
If you go to Fratelli Tutti, it condemns all three of those propositions, or at least, or I should say, it says that liberty, egalitarianism, and fraternity basically cannot exist without Christ. That the principles of the French Revolution are rooted in basically this ridiculous humanistic framework, right? And then Taylor Marshall has the audacity to have calumny, or what just say, to calumnize, is that a word? To bear false
calumniate.
Yeah, to calumniate Pope Francis and not even read the damn encyclical or the context of it, dude. It was the most egregious thing I'd ever seen in my whole life. And by the way, I fell for it at first, and then my pastor, or my spiritual director said, it doesn't say that. He's like, it doesn't say that. It says the exact opposite of what this person is saying. And by the way, my spiritual director, who does our Latin Mass, he all but named Taylor Marshall and said that people like this are destructive to the faith.
I would agree. In fact, actually, when I told my friend Brother Peter that I ironically, one of my best friends IRL is actually named Brother Peter, and shout out to him if he ever listens.
Not Peter Diamond.
Not Peter Diamond, a real Brother Peter.
Peter Ruby.
But he's actually in a Reformed Jesuit order. It's really cool, actually. But they, I told him when I was still into Taylor Marshall that I watched Taylor Marshall. He's like, dude, you got to stop. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? He's like, he's literally he's destroying the church right now. Because he's like, infiltration, he said, is literally like the Da Vinci Code. And at the time I was like, what? No, dude, it's not. And then I literally watched the 2-hour review from Recent Theology, and I was like, Brother Peter was literally right. It is the Da Vinci Code. He literally calls St. Paul VI a homosexual in it, even though that was drummed up by an Italian journalist. That was completely false.
Wow.
I mean, Taylor Marshall operates. He likes to think he's this conservative. If Louis Veillot, Spexo and my hero, could come down from heaven, he would beat the crap out of Taylor Marshall for the stuff he says. I'm not even kidding. Louis Veillot literally said, this was verbatim his words, when the Pope thinks, God is using the Pope to think. He was a papal defender. Literally, he's my hero. I literally take after him. And so, when people are like, dude, you defend Pope Francis too much, I'm like, no, I do not. In fact, I don't defend him enough.
Facts.
If your disposition is to say that you defend the Holy Father too much, you might be retarded.
Yeah.
If you genuinely think that you don't have a duty to literally catch a bullet for that dude, you're retarded. I'm sorry.
I would die for Pope Francis, by the way.
I would die for Pope Francis.
I would.
If you wouldn't die for Pope Francis, you're not Catholic. Honestly.
Yeah, not Catholic.
You're not a
In
real
a way,
Catholic.
I've literally had a picture of him on my wall for 2 years. So I'm not BSing you. I have a framed picture of this guy.
Pine Sap. So somebody in chat. Pine Sap. Somebody in chat is somebody saying, do we like Vegano? What's his name? Viagano?
Vigano.
Do we like him?
Vigano's a schismatic and he's hurting the church.
Is he a schismatic?
Vigano, Archbishop Vigano.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he
totally
denies
is. He
that
basically says Pope
Pope
Francis is an
is the
anti-pope.
Wait, is he still an archbishop or is he retired? What is his deal?
He's like, I think he's like retired or something. But yeah, I mean, if he was excommunicated, I would completely understand the decision because he's like a bad dude, legit.
You see, the thing is, people take good things. People take good things. Like Archbishop Vigano was criticizing the pedophilia scandal in the church, and that was a good thing. But people follow them out of the church, like E. Michael Jones says. Like, people take good things, then they just go way too far with them, and then they fall into the sin of schism. And it happens every single time. It happened with the Protestants. You know, the Bible is a good thing. They took it way too far with their own personal interpretations of the Bible, and they followed it out of the church.
Yeah, E. Michael Jones says that the Bible.
It's almost like this idolatry.
Yeah, E. Michael Jones says that the Bible without the magisterium becomes a revolutionary book. And did you see that Pope Francis today? He said that pornography is like disruptive to public health or something.
I did. That was awesome.
Good.
Do you guys know what the whole scandal with McCarrick and what was like Pope Francis' involvement in that?
Yeah, I think that's completely just taken out of context because Vigano and other people were basically like saying like, oh, these people are, pedophiles or doing wrong things or whatever, but they provided no context or any tangible proof. And if they are pedophiles, if they did do something sexually explicit or something like that, that is like that they shouldn't have done, which I'm sure maybe they did or whatever, then that is completely wrong and condemnable. But we also need to, like you said, the Catholic position is to imply that everybody has the best intentions, right? We can't just think the worst of everybody.
Yeah. In the literal words of God, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor.
Right. So
I understand this.
I got a lot of crap for this one time for saying this, but it's completely true, and I think I told the Spexo before. I think I told the Pines before I did that. If you have this view, you will literally. So this is like the believe all women view, and no one likes to say that, but it's completely true. The fact of the matter is that the church is always and should always give preferential treatment towards a priest. I do not think that it means that you should cover up if you know for a fact of the fact of the matter that he is a pedophile or a sexual predator of any sort or homosexual, whatever, right? But if you do not have solid proof to condemn that man, which is, at least in the United States, it's a very high bar to make sure that somebody is actually a criminal, you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, and even more so because they are a priest.
That should be the case for anyone, I think. That should be the
no,
case
I think.
And what
but
go ahead.
Sorry, but the context of the McCarrick thing was that Vigano was making these claims, and yes, it turned out to be true. That's completely true. Hindsight's always 20/20. But there was no actual proof of that until years later in 2019, when eventually proof came out. He was indicted, and after he was indicted and physical proof had been provided, you had like 10 plus witnesses or claimants to being raped. He was defrocked.
Yeah, this is what the equivalent. This is what it's equivalent to. It's like, let's say you have a friend named Mike that you're friends with or whatever, right? And you've chilled with him a bunch of times or whatever. And somebody comes up and says, "Oh, your friend Mike raped a kid or something," right? And you're like, "Oh, really? Okay, show me some evidence." And you're like, "Oh, well, I don't really have any evidence, but a bunch of people are saying it and stuff like that." And it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to just like stop being friends with him and like just condemn him for something that is hearsay essentially or whatever. And then 5 years later, it turns out that what they were saying is true and there is evidence. And then what the media and everybody is saying is like, oh, well, you were told about this 5 years ago and you didn't do anything. And it's like, well, there was no evidence back then. There was nothing to like make me believe that this was the case back then. And then people are like, oh, well, you're a pedophile sympathizer. And it's just completely disingenuous.
Yeah.
What about Michael Voris? What do you guys think about Michael Voris?
Wasn't he secretly a homosexual?
I like Michael Voris. Michael Voris, well, he was a homosexual like prior to his conversion or whatever.
He was not secretly, no.
But yeah, I mean, he's admitted to it and he's apparently repented towards it. I think that Church Militant does a lot of good. I think that they go a little too far with the stuff that they say about the SSPX. Even though I'm not pro SSPX, I think the fact that they call them like Nazi pedophiles is a little bit too much. But I think overall that Michael Voris and Church Militant has done a lot of good work.
Yeah, but what about his stuff?
They go a little hard on the Holy Father, though, admittedly, and I would like them if they like doubled back on that position. I'd like him more.
Why? What has he been saying about the Pope?
He said that Pope Francis should step down.
Yeah.
Do people not realize that, like, if you think Pope Francis is liberal, like, the next Pope, I'm sorry to break it to you, is probably going to be far worse than Pope Francis. Like, it's probably going to be, like, very, very worse, as Michael Lofton has been warning us about for, like, the last 2 years. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, we're going to get some rad trad in the papal office. It's like, it's probably going to be worse for a little while longer, honestly.
But even that being said, he'll still be a pillar of the faith, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about it. And you know what? Like, I don't want to say this because it sounds a little bit cringe or whatever. Like, I kind of, not that I hope, because I don't want anything bad to happen to the faith. I don't want anybody to be pushed away or whatever. But, like, if we have somebody that is portrayed as a bad pope or a really bad pope, it makes me want to defend them more, because we are defending the See of Peter. We are defending, like, that the fact that the church cannot falter, that the gates of hell shall not prevail. So it's not that I want a bad pope, but it's almost like no matter how bad the pope is, like, I'm still going to defend him.
Specs will be like,
it's like that meme I posted where all these people will be like, I don't believe the media and I don't care what they say, and then they instantly would believe what the media says about the Pope.
Yeah.
Well, Ron Conte says that, like, these people will break off because he said that what will happen essentially is, like, there will be a conservative, like, there will be a more, I hate to use the term more conservative because, again, it doesn't matter. The Pope's the pillar of the faith no matter what. But there will be, like, maybe a more, like, conservative Pope, for lack of a better term. And they're going to be like, oh, dude, this Pope's going to be so base. He's going to overturn Vatican II. He's going to say St. John Paul II is a heretic. And you know what's going to happen? None of that. None of that will literally happen at all. And they will continue to go into schism, and they will continue to, like, go down these weird rabbit holes and dissent and stuff like that until they eventually just break off. I mean, that's what's going to happen. Like, it's again, schism's a sin against charity, and they're just going to continue to commit a sin against charity. I'm sorry, but it's true.
And also, I think with these guys, these kind of guys, yeah, they're like, it's like, you know how sometimes people, like, you know, the Christian Arians or whatever on Telegram have this, like, racial idolatry, like rad trads and schismatics, they have this, like, political, like, political idolatry. Like, it's not to say don't be conservative, it's just, like, they have this political idolatry that goes beyond, like, they put politics over faith. And then whenever Pope Francis gets lied about by, like, some Protestant in Fox News, they're like, oh my gosh, guys, the Pope said something terrible. We need someone based as a Pope, and it's just like shut up.
Yo, Pine Sap.
By the way, a lot of the critics of Pope Francis are, like, notorious anti-Catholics. Like even conservative critics, like Ann Coulter, some eggless Protestant.
Anglo bitch. No, I'm sorry.
Ann Coulter, I'm like, very nice to meet you, Ann.
Anglo that. Yo, wait, hold on. Pine
Here's
Sap.
a carton of eggs.
Hold on, Pine Sap. Okay, so this guy in chat is saying, I don't know. I think your attitude is right during ordinary circumstances, but if we are in the great apostasy, some of the normal obligations to defend the clergy might be off. What about Father Ripperger?
Shut up.
No. Here's the thing.
Wait, Pine Sap, are we in the great apostasy? Wait, hold on.
Why are you using great apostasy unironically?
Hold on. Everybody's talking at once. Chill.
Hold up. We gotta deal with this. Hold up.
Pine Sap, are we in the great apostasy? What's going on?
No. In fact, actually, many of the saints and this is referenced in Contra Sede Vacantism's book, many of the saints essentially condemn the idea of what they call the great apostasy. Now, there could be the world falling away from the faith. Like, there could be a ton of Catholics that say, nope, we don't want to be Catholic anymore. There's still going to be a pope. There's still going to be bishops. There's still going to be cardinals. They're not going to lose the faith. If you seriously believe that, the gates of hell have prevailed against the church.
Well, what about
Vatican I anathematizes that very idea. Peter will have unfailing faith, and Peter will also have a permanency to his office to literally, as the First Vatican Council says, to the end of time, right?
Dude, if a bishop is like a child molester or something, does he lose his? He's obviously, like, disqualified, right?
Well, he doesn't automatically lose his office, but yeah, he would be like shoved down. The other thing is what we have to talk about with obedience. If your bishop told you to do something that was against the faith, you could disobey that bishop if you were obeying, of course, the higher authority of the Vatican. So if a bishop makes like a pro gay statement or something like that, like Bishop Batzing, who should be excommunicated in Germany, you do not have to obey your bishop in that way because you are obeying that higher authority.
All right, there's two things. There's two things I want to ask.
These pedophile priests were made an example of. Honestly, I think a lot of people would be impressed with the church. You know, if like they were just made an example of. You know.
No, I agree. I think that'd be fantastic. But let's let Spexo speak real quick because he's been trying to ask something. So go ahead, Spexo.
Right, there's two things I want to ask. Firstly, where does this idea of the great apostasy stem from?
Literal like people using private interpretation of like saint like prophecies and stuff like that. Which, as St. John Henry Newman warns us, mysticism is the easiest way to find yourself outside of the church. Because then people start like privately interpreting and they get into like apocalyptic thought, and they're like, oh, I think this private thing means this. But if you read the book Reign of the Antichrist, which talks about many of the saint prophecies, literally like none of them say that like there won't be a pope or that the pope will fall away. They might say that there will be like an anti-pope, but again, emphasis on someone who is not the Pope, like someone who's not the Pope who's like contradicting the real Pope. But the real Pope will be identified by the church. I think if that prophecy is true, I think what will happen is like this German synodal way will split off of the church and they'll like elect their own Pope. And I'm sure the world would like put him in the spotlight and act like he's the real Pope or whatever. But in reality, all true Catholics would know exactly who the Pope is, right?
And this guy is saying, would it be possible to have a possessed Pope? If so, should the faithful still obey him?
No, it
such
can't
a
happen.
retarded question.
These people are schizophrenic.
Wait, hold on. We don't need to install him, guys, because he might legitimately be asking and stuff like that. We don't want to insult the brother or anything like that. He might just be trying to figure it out. Basically,
I totally
my
get it.
friend,
We should be charitable with this brother, but a lot of the people like who originate these conspiracy theories are just they make the most uncharitable assumptions about the church imaginable.
Yes,
where they say things like the church is run by Freemasonic pedophiles, and it's like, come on,
let's
bro.
try to correct him charitably without jumping to conclusions.
Yes. So a book I want to recommend you, my friend, that really helped me a lot in my faith, and I think would actually do good for every single person here. If y'all want to go get a copy real quick, it's like $12. It's super cheap. Bishop Gasser's Relatio of it. So the book is called Gift of Infallibility, and it's edited by Reverend James T. Connor, but it's also written by Bishop Gasser from the First Vatican Council. It's the guiding interpretive document of Pastor Eternus, meaning that's the document on papal infallibility. And what he talks about in there, I'm almost, I think I'm like a quarter way from through the book. I might actually bust it out tomorrow. That'd be awesome. But the book essentially goes over how to think of the papacy, how to think of papal infallibility, and how to think of the papal office. And he makes it clear the Pope's never going to fall into error or be a heretic or anything like that. That's literally impossible, right? And all the saints make this clear. Saint Robert Bellarmine said this. Even the earliest ecumenical councils say this. That say that Peter will like last on forever, right? Like the office of Peter will last on. I think that's said in Nicaea 2 or Constantinople 3. But this idea of Peter's office being permanent is the only way that he could be the rock of the church by the delegation of Christ, who is automatically the rock of the church, right? Because we rest on Christ. So the idea that we could have a heretical pope, a pope that could bind the church to error or something like that is completely erroneous and it's untenable.
Could a pope be possessed though? Like even if like we grant that like they'll never bind something heretical to the church, to the universal church, but could a pope be possessed? Is that possible, or is that even what?
A pope could maybe be, that's a great question. A pope could be possessed and do things in, say, his personal life that could be like really bad or something like that. But in his capacity as pope, he would not do anything that would harm the church.
Okay. Somebody says, I'm a catechumen. How much should I be concerned with researching which parish I should go to?
Just go to a website, and hopefully someone can post this in the chat, Reverend Catholic Mass. And there you will find Novus Ordo parishes, Eastern Rite parishes, TLM parishes, just great parishes all over the continental United States. You can go there and you'll have a great time.
Okay, were marriages... Hold up, this chat is going too fast. Were marriages that were meant to be virginal from the beginning common back then? I guess you're talking about the perpetual virginity. I don't know.
Yeah, scroll up. He's asking about the perpetual virginity.
We talked about the perpetual virginity before. It's a Catholic dogma, and there's scriptural evidence towards it. Go ahead.
When he's talking about marriages, is he talking about common back then in a sense of like, was it common back then for people to be virgins before they were married? Because I would say yes.
No, he said. Well, I mean, of course, that should be the norm anytime. But no, I think he's referring to like to get married and stay virginal for the whole time. Was it common? Because that's the idea of perpetual virginity, that Mary married Saint Joseph and remained a virgin permanently, obviously.
Oh, Mary was a special exception because she cooperated with God's grace. So it wasn't common back then, but Mary, being our mother and being the new Ark of the Covenant, she was a special case. So no, it was not common, but she was special in that sense that she was safeguarded from committing any act of adult relations.
Yeah, and like we talked about in the beginning, from the Greek translation, it's implicit that she must have taken some type of vow of perpetual virginity prior to her marriage, because she did not understand how she could ever bear a child when Gabriel approached her, because she had already, I guess, planned on staying a virgin.
By the way, few know this, but the biggest act of anti-Semitism possible is blasphemy against the Blessed Virgin Mary. So
that's the that's a good point. That's a good point.
That's a good take. Guys, ADL, we gotta get it. We gotta get it on the horn. Shut it down.
Why would? I mean, whatever. I guess we gotta go with these questions because I think this guy's asking in good faith or whatever. If you don't want me to keep reading these, I won't. But so far, I mean,
no, that's totally fine. I do gotta go eventually because my folks are probably waiting for me to join them at dinner, so I can't stay on really too much longer. But go ahead.
Well, give me a time limit. Give me a time limit. How many minutes? You have?
Maybe like 15
minutes. All right, so it's 1:40, so 1:55 will end the stream. All right. Why would papal infallibility prevent possession if it only extends to magisterial declaration? We didn't say that. We said that even if he was possessed, it wouldn't affect the magisterium in binding something false to the church.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's my question. Okay, hold on. Let's see. Blah blah blah. Thank you so much. Okay, that seems to be it so far. Real quick, what I wanted to talk about, I guess, and then we'll end the stream, is so I posted a meme basically, and this was basically a reaction to Father, what's his name? Who's the really liberal father? James Martin.
Father James Martin.
Yeah, Father James Martin, who was basically saying, I'm pro-life, but, and then he went on this whole tangent on Twitter about like the dignity of like the homeless or something like that had nothing to do with being pro-life. It made no sense. But I basically posted a meme of Trump saying that I'm calling for the complete and total disbandment of the Jesuit order until we could figure out what the hell is going on. And on Instagram, there was a lot of pushback and people saying like, well, I'm part of a Jesuit college and they're very Orthodox and they're awesome. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of like Orthodox and based Jesuit people or whatever, but there's clearly a prevalent thing going on in the Jesuit order where they're very liberal or academic or science or materialistic, whatever the case be. There's a reason there's a stereotype among the Jesuits, right? Like there's clearly something going on or whatever. And he was basically saying like, oh no, that's just the popular Jesuits or whatever. And it's like, well, no other order is having this type of problem or whatever. So can you explain a little bit, or I don't know how much you know, I'm sure you know everything, but how much, what is going on with the Jesuits that like that they're known for being like these liberal, basically like heterodox Catholics?
Yeah, so Malachi Martin, I would recommend, please don't trust him. He's total nut. But something that he did get right is he documented essentially around the time of the 60s how the Jesuit order, by and large, was infiltrated by sort of a liberal hierarchy. And so what happened is you almost started to have this civil war in the Jesuits where you had men like, for instance, Father John Hardin, servant of God, Father John Hardin, excuse me, who was literally one of the best, like, potentially modern saints of our time. Like, he's awesome. He's fully orthodox. He helped me, like, understand the hermeneutic of continuity. Like, if you read, like, his Catholic catechism, he literally says that the syllabus of errors is still binding today and stuff like that, which is really based. So you had men like him still in the order, but you had a clear liberal takeover. In fact, Father Hardin was said to have suffered what was called a white martyrdom because he defended against contraception, and he was basically like shut down. Like he was basically he defended against contraception, excuse me, and he was basically like shut down by some people and told like he had to like leave the magazine that he was like working at. That was like a Jesuit run magazine. I don't think he was punished by the order, but he was like punished by like the people who had him on the magazine. And essentially what happened was this really bad infiltration of the Jesuits. I understand what people say about there have been other orders affected, like Father Richard Rohr should really be laicized. He's a heretic. And he's like a Franciscan and stuff like that. But the takeover, I think, has manifested more with the Jesuits, especially since the Jesuits were like the military order of the church, right? They were like the Marines, and they would go out and they would spread the faith. And I mean, you look at like the based like 1920s like Catholic books, most of them are written by Jesuits, right? Because they would go out and they would try to just take over the world for Christ, and it's awesome, right? But unfortunately, because of that takeover, now the Jesuits have become kind of notorious heretics and stuff like that. And just or not all, well, yeah, liberals and heretics and stuff like that. Not all of them, though. There's still a lot of fantastic Jesuits. I had a Jesuit high school near me that was renowned for those fathers being incredibly orthodox and integral to Catholic tradition. So it's not all Jesuits, but there is a problem. Really, again, it's just dissent. This is what St. Paul VI was talking about when he had his smoke of Satan has entered the church speech, which very few people actually read the full speech. What he talks about in that speech is how very few people anymore just listen to the voice of the church. How it's like we look to social movements, we look to like political movements, we look to other things rather than just listening to our mother, the church. And I completely agree with him. And so, me trying to live out that speech and that directive, I only listen to the church, and my judgment about any other thing is put through the church's lens. And I think that the thing to thin out the Jesuits has got to be, do you agree with the church on everything or do you not? If you don't, you're out.
Base.
Done.
All right. I think that's a good place to end it. I think that was a successful first episode of the Catholic Hangout, besides whatever that guy was doing in the beginning. I'll edit that out when I upload it to YouTube. But
remember to delete this stream on Cozy because you can't.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Once I download
I was
the video,
remind you
I'll delete the stream. But
wait, what happened in the beginning?
Some guy was like showing his parts. It was really bad.
But yeah, it was gross.
Yeah. So I don't know how I don't know how he got past the bots or what the heck that was. But we banned him. It's all good now.
What?
Yeah, he was showing very
showing
explicit
his dangling.
Yeah, it was gross. But anyway, all that said, I think besides that, it was a very successful stream. I hope to do more of these. I like these chill off the cup streams. We're planning to do more Logos Triumphant. I think we're going to start our Vatican II series soon, as well as what are we doing on Wednesday with that guy you said? What was that about? Papal infallibility or something?
So Wednesday we have a very special guest actually from the Great White North, Alan Rule, who's a very renowned Canadian Catholic apologist, and he helped me really understand papal infallibility from a historic standpoint. So we were going to invite him on. I'm still trying to see if we can get Elijah Yassi to come on too. Elijah is wonderful. Check out his YouTube channel. Check out Alan Rule's YouTube channel. Both those guys are doing so many great things, and they're great guys. Also, I showed Alan our channel the other day, Spexo, and he already likes us, so awesome. We're in.
Based. Yeah, honestly, that's like my. I don't care about like what like leftists or the media or liberals or anybody says about like us or whatever, calling us white supremacists and Nazis or something like that. But if like other like online Catholics are saying like good things about us, that makes me so happy. Yeah, anyway, so this is a great stream. Thank you, PineSap. Thank you, everybody who joined. Follow me on t.me/spexo. Follow PineSap at t.me/ what is it? Narrow way Florentine. Narrow way Florentine.
Actually, no. I think I changed that link. Actually, I think I just called it the Narrow Way. Let me check real quick. Oh, it looks like it's still Narrow Way Florentine. Okay, I'll change that out.
Right, he's gonna fix it to a more simpler thing. t.me/narrow way Florentine. So we'll see you guys in a couple of days for Logos Triumphant. Oh, so we're gonna do the Papal Infallibility one, and we're also going to start our Vatican II series. It should be exciting. Thank you everybody for joining. God bless, and I love you. Have a great night.